This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. Mr. Pfeiffer, would you give us the facts of the case, please?
This property is located at 222 East Broad Street. This is the appeal of Aidan Henninger to convert a 6-room boarding house and an apartment dwelling within one half of a former duplex structure into 3 multifamily dwellings, which requires dimensional variances for minimum tract size, 9,000 square feet required, 3,240 square feet existing, lot area per dwelling unit, 2,500 square feet permitted, 1,080 square feet proposed, and minimum lot width, 90 feet required, 30 feet existing. A variance to waive the requirement of a principal commercial use on the front street level and a special exception to reduce the off-street parking requirement, 6 required, 1 proposed. This record lot measures 30 feet by 108 feet or 3,240 square feet and is located in the CL Limited Commercial Zoning District.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer. Mr. Henninger, at this time, we're going to ask you to give us what your appeal actually is, and I beg your pardon?
Yes, counsel.
I beg your pardon. And your counsel is, please.
My name is Stephanie Coble. I'm an attorney with
Do you normally get a musical piece with your,
Oh,
when
that's
you're
new.
introduced?
That's new in this city.
I sort of like it. It's an event.
Look at their screen. Here, that should have an exit.
Microphone?
Looking for it.
It's right there.
Yeah.
Where's it, Bill?
I think it's the one that with the speaker on it, right? That?
Mine's pushed all the way over.
Okay.
It's still-
It's the speaker. Speaker icon.
Yeah, we're good.
Speaker here. Off.
All right.
Right
All right, hold you. Why don't you proceed,
Thank you. If I may, I'd like to approach with our exhibits.
please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With all the names?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
She has
Thank you.
all her numbers.
Here's one for you. As I mentioned at the onset, my name is Stephanie Coble. I'm an attorney with Fitzpatrick, Lenson Buba, and I represent the applicant, Aiden Hedinger. As the zoning officer mentioned, this property is located at 222 East Broad Street. The property is zoned limited commercial, and Mr. Henninger is the owner of the subject property, which is evidenced by the deed in your packets marked under tab 1 as Exhibit A1. The applicant plans to repurpose the existing 3-story structure from a structure that had an apartment on the first floor and 6 boarding house rooms on the second and third floors to a 3-unit multifamily dwelling, essentially an apartment on each level. Applicant proposes that applicant intends to reside in the apartment located on the first floor and rent the unit on the second floor and the unit on the third floor. Each apartment will have its own bathroom, kitchen, and living unit. The existing structure was built and the lot was created around 1925, which is really what necessitates the need for many of the dimensional variances requested tonight. The applicant submitted a zoning application to the city related to this project. A copy of that application is found at Exhibit A2 and marked under tab 2 of your binders. Essentially, what we're looking for tonight is a handful of dimensional variances, mainly related to lot size, and a variance from the section that requires a commercial use on the first floor. Essentially, applicant wants to voluntarily make his use less intense than what is required by the zoning ordinance. And finally, applicants also seeking a special exception to reduce the required parking. Applicant has 1 parking space in an existing garage on the property and proposes to add an on-site parking pad along the side of the property. I'd now like to turn my testimony to Mr. Hedinger. Can you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Aiden Henninger. My last name is spelled Henninger.
And can
Okay.
pull it closer if you want to. Can you restate that?
My name is Aiden Henninger. My last name is spelled Henninger.
And can you state your address for the record?
My address is 222 East Broad Street, Bethlehem, PA 18018.
And can you confirm that you're the owner of the subject parcel?
Yes.
And did you retrieve the zoning placard notice from the city of Bethlehem?
Yes, I did.
And did you post that placard on or before August 18th, 2021?
Yes.
And where did you post the placard?
I posted the placard on the front door facing outward so that passerbyers could see.
And did the placard remain in place until tonight?
Yes, the placard is still in place.
And I think it's fair as the owner of the property, would you say you're familiar with the property and the surrounding area?
Yes, I'm familiar with the property and the surrounding area.
And you've been there recently?
Yes, I have.
Can you describe for the board the surrounding uses?
On my block, there's a large majority of commercial real estate, but there is few residential properties as well. But I think that the city would benefit from having more residential properties in this area.
Aiden, I'd like you to open to tab 3, what is marked as Exhibit A3. Is that a true and correct copy of the site plan of the existing conditions at the property?
Yes, it is.
And looking at that, does that confirm that the existing lot width is 30 feet?
Yes,
Does it also confirm that the existing lot size is 3,240 square feet?
yes,
Now, based on math, and this is a scary thing, an attorney doing math, you wish to have 3 dwelling units on the property. Does it then figure that the lot area per dwelling unit is 1,080 square
yes,
feet?
yes, it does.
And do these dimensions of the lot create a hardship for you as far as zoning ordinance goes?
Yes, they do.
And Aiden, did you create the subject lot or construct the structure on the lot?
No, I did not. Per the tax records, the property was built in 1925.
So it's fair to say that you didn't create the need for the dimensional variances requested tonight.
No, I did not.
And can you tell the board how you plan to use the property?
I would like to turn the property into a 3-unit apartment building with a 1-bedroom apartment on each of the 3 floors.
And prior to purchasing the property, how was the property most recently used?
There was a 1-bedroom apartment with a kitchen and a bathroom on the first floor, and then there were 5 to 6 available boarding rooms that was run as a commercial business on the 2nd and 3rd floors.
So it was essentially a rooming house.
Yes,
And presumably each room had at least one tenant in the room.
yes, presumably.
Now I'd like to focus on the specifics of the apartments that you propose. Can you describe the planned apartments for the board?
Yes, so my first floor apartment would have kitchen, bathroom, living room, bedroom. Second floor apartment would have the same kitchen, bathroom, living room, bedroom. And then the 3rd floor apartment would have a kitchen, bathroom, and a large bedroom.
And how would the apartments on the first floor be accessed?
There's a fire escape, but there's a fire escape, but the main entrance would be through the front door, which would have a shared stairwell, a shared hallway and stairwell that has access to all 3 of the units. And the first floor apartment also has an entrance at the back.
I just want to clarify your testimony right there. Is your testimony that there's a fire escape for the 2nd and 3rd floors, correct?
There's a fire escape for the 3rd floor. There is no fire escape landing for the 2nd floor. And then there's a shared entrance, the front door, which is how you'll access all 3 of the apartments. And the first floor apartment also has an entrance from the back door.
And Aiden, I'd like to turn you to what is marked under tab 4. Exhibit A4. You take a look at that, please. Is that a true and correct depiction of how you plan to renovate the interior of the building?
Yes, it is.
So on the first floor, is it your intent to have one 690 square foot apartment?
Yes,
And on the 2nd floor, is it your intent to have one 812 square foot apartment?
yes,
And on the 3rd floor, you're proposing one 539 square foot apartment.
yes,
Do you also propose to generally renovate and rehab this structure to bring it into a better state of repair?
yes, of course.
And can you explain to the board why you feel a residential unit on the first floor is better than a commercial unit?
I believe that my proposed use is less intense than the most previous use. And I also think that the surrounding area would benefit from having residential units. I think there's a lot of small businesses that could really benefit from having extra people in the area to support their businesses.
And when you say your use is less intense than the previous use, you're referring to the boarding house, correct?
Yes, my proposed use would have less tenants than the most recent use.
And on the first floor, will you have a single tenant?
Yes, I will live on the first floor.
And the 2nd floor, would that be limited to no more than 2 individuals in that apartment?
Yes,
And the 3rd floor, would you limit it to no more than 1 individual in that apartment?
yes,
So at most, it would be 4 individuals there,
yes,
where in the past, it was 5 to 6 individuals in each of the boarding rooms, plus the folks in the first floor apartment.
yes.
Can you tell the board how many parking spots you propose?
I currently have 1 parking spot. It's a garage, and I propose to build a 2nd parking spot, a parking pad along the side of the property.
And I would like to turn you to Exhibit A3, 3rd tab. Can you briefly describe to the board where you propose to put that parking pad?
Yes, so you can see the fire escape along the side of the building. Closer to the bottom of the page, right alongside the kitchen and dining space outside between the sidewalk and the building.
Now, is there also street parking in the immediate vicinity of this property?
Yes, there's street parking on East Broad Street.
And is the property also close to public transportation routes?
Yes, very close.
In your opinion, as the owner of the property, are 2 on-site parking spaces plus off-street parking sufficient, plus on-street parking rather, sufficient for the 3 dwelling units?
Yes, I believe it's sufficient parking.
Since your use is residential, do you believe that the peak parking times for your use will be outside of the traditional business hours of the nearby small businesses?
Yes, I believe that for the most part, my tenants will be at work while the customers of the surrounding businesses will be using that on-street parking.
Is the relief you are requesting tonight the minimum amount of relief necessary for your proposed use?
Yes, it is.
As someone familiar with the property and the surrounding area, do you believe that the relief requested tonight will negatively impact the neighborhood?
Not at all.
In fact, you believe it will be better than the most recent prior use?
I do.
Do you have any reason to believe that the relief requested tonight will substantially impair the use or development of any adjacent properties?
No,
Do you have any reason to believe that the relief requested tonight will have an adverse impact on the public health, safety, or welfare of the community?
no.
Do you believe that this use is in the best interest of the city?
Yes, I do. I think that the surrounding businesses will benefit from this proposed use.
I have nothing further for this witness, but I'd like to move to admit the exhibit submitted this evening.
Questions from members of the board? Ms. Stone?
Mr. Henninger, you gave your address as 222. Are you currently residing there?
I'm still living with my mother right now, but I'll be moving in this weekend.
Okay. Are there any other tenants there?
I'll have 2 of my buddies living with me as roommates.
Okay. So none of the other rooms are habitable for what you've, for the current or hoped for participants or residents rather?
I'm sorry, can you clarify?
So there's no one on the 2nd and 3rd floors?
No.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Schneck?
Tori, you said that you believe that the amount of parking will be sufficient. What's that based off of?
So on East Broad Street, there's no restrictions to parking aside from the one day that there's street cleaning in the morning. I believe it's Tuesday. And with 2 proposed parking spaces, I believe that it's a very realistic possibility that tenants will be able to find 2 more on-street parking spaces.
Okay, have you tried to locate other parking spaces on surface lots through the Bethlehem Parking Authority?
No, I have not.
Okay. How do you plan on accessing your parking pad?
So if you can, that's exactly where the parking pad will be. I guess I'll have to have approval to be able to use that sidewalk to get onto the parking pad.
All right, and you would work with the city
Yes, I would.
engineer to get those approvals?
Yes, of course.
What would happen if we made that a requirement and the city engineer could not figure out how to make that space work for you?
I'm not sure. We'd have to come back.
Okay.
That'd be a confined space.
Why do you need the 3 units instead of just 2?
I believe that 3 units is in the best interest of the surrounding location because I think that this area needs more residential living spaces. And I know there are some other larger living spaces, apartment buildings being built in the near future in this area. But I think that the city would really benefit from building these 1 or 2 blocks of East Broad Street up. And I think that three apartments would really help achieve that.
What's your target person for both
for my
The
tenants.
second and then the third floor unit.
Young professionals, I plan to make the apartments pretty nice. I'll try to rent them for market value, which right now is pretty expensive compared to in the past.
Right. I think that's all I have right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lee?
Okay, hi. How would a person access the fire escape from the second floor?
There is currently no access from the second floor to the fire escape. I'm not sure how the boarding house was able to do that, but there's only there's a landing at the third floor, one of the rooms on the third floor.
Mhm.
And as of now, the only exit for the people on the second floor would be down the stairwell out the front door.
Okay, because I'm looking on the plans, it looks like it could possibly hook to the window area, the bay window.
For the second floor?
Yes,
Yes, it doesn't, but
if you had to put in
Yes.
something. You could
yes,
add
I think that's a
landing,
possibility for sure.
The window as access.
Yep.
Okay, and also looking at the plans, on the third floor apartment, I'm just curious, I don't see a bedroom.
The bedroom, so there's no third floor apartment, there's
Yes.
no living room, so
I see a living room, a kitchen.
yeah, that it's labeled as living room. That would be the bedroom / living space.
Okay, just one large
Yeah,
area.
yeah, it's the largest room on that floor.
Okay, I was just curious how that was working.
Yeah, no, that should say bedroom / living room.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
You, Mr. Novotny?
Actually, a question for the zoning officer. The proposed pad, would he need a variance for that? Based on, just looking at the picture, it doesn't look like there's a lot of room there.
So standard parking space is 9 by 18. That would be the same for a parallel space, although sometimes we recommend it goes up to 20 or 22 feet. The question is, what is the right of way width? And I can get that for you in a few minutes. That would determine whether there's actually enough space on the subject parcel to accommodate that parking
Right.
pad. Regardless, the city engineer would have to approve any kind of encroachment into the right of way, depressing the curb, removing the sidewalk, adding the parking
Exactly.
space itself.
May I ask a follow-up question? Does that in any way impact impervious coverage?
So in the CL district, it refers back to the RT district for multifamily dwelling, and there is no maximum impervious coverage for RT.
Thank you.
That was my only question.
Thank you. Mr. Shantz?
No questions.
Actually, I have no questions either at this point. At this point, I would open the floor. I'm sorry, Attorney Malcolm, did you have anything you need on this?
No.
Mr. Piper, did you have anything? Clarify.
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Members of the audience, let me just find out with the folks with us here. Is there anyone wishing to ask a question of the testimony you just heard? If so, please come to the microphone, identify yourself. Seeing no one, I would offer the same opportunity to anyone who was with us virtually. If you care to ask a question, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Seeing no one, Attorney Coble, did you have any additional witnesses?
I have no additional witnesses. I do have one question on redirect for Mr. Henninger. Mr. Henninger, isn't it true by providing the 3 apartments with 1 studio apartment on the 3rd floor that, sorry, I need to speak into the microphone, that you will be providing an increased mix of apartments for, a better apartment for a single person versus maybe a couple on the 2nd floor?
Yes, definitely.
Nothing else?
And that's fine. Did you have any closing remarks?
No, I think the record here is pretty clear. He does, and we have established through testimony that he meets the criteria for a variance under the MPC. And really what he's trying to do is take the previous use, which was much more intense than his use, and bring it down to a use that's a little bit more intense, probably in line with the neighborhood. And I think it's pretty clear the dimensional variances are really necessitated by a lot that was created almost 100 years ago and he had no influence over. So I have nothing further.
Thank you. And I apologize. I may have jumped the gun. I did not afford members of the audience an opportunity to either comment or introduce testimony. Is there anyone in chambers who would like to offer testimony? If so, please come to the microphone and identify yourself. Seeing no one, the same offer to anyone with us virtually. If you wish to introduce testimony or offer comment, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself.
That's one question.
Seeing no one, we do have a follow-up question from a member of the board, Mr. Shams.
Actually, my question is to Mr. Piper. Mr. Piper, since this is being changed from a boarding house to apartments, and since there doesn't seem to be a second floor emergency escape, since it's becoming an apartment, will there be one required by code?
I couldn't answer that question. We'd have to ask the building code official.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up just based on that?
Yes, please.
Are you willing, as part of your renovation, to comply with all city codes and ordinances?
Yes, of course.
As a follow-up to that, would you be willing to put an escape route on that second floor for the apartment?
If it is required, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gene. We're going to go off the
Well, I just
record.
have one point.
Okay.
Sorry, we'll make this quick. So just follow up on Mr. Nevatnik's question. The right-of-way width for Penn Street is 20 feet. So that's going to include, here. This is the right-of-way width for Penn Street. This is the subject property. So if we go back to our Google image, 20 feet is going to be somewhere from here to somewhere in here. Most likely this line to about this line here. So it's up to the applicant to verify exactly what are the meets and bounds of their parcel and then verify if they do have the minimum required width of 9 feet for that space.
And that is done through application or review with civil and with
They
the city
would-
engineers.
It's correct. It's submit the right-of-way application. And then the ordinance does allow for you to consider other areas for them to have parking. It doesn't have to be on site in this scenario. It just has to be within a certain radius.
We understand. It was just a testimony that was introduced, so I appreciate that clarification. Gene, we're going to go off the record and into executive session out in the. Yeah. Because otherwise Jim and I have to squeeze past, which doesn't work well.
Chance you could tell me what you have so we can refer to my number rather than just guessing. Seemed like I'm prepared. I wasn't on vacation yesterday.
Yeah.
So
Applications are
down to
good.
Okay. But most people can find me pretty easily.
Letter,
it's fine.
elevations.
These images now. He gave me two.
Okay.
You gave me one and a piece. I can bring it.
Those are actually good. The color ones are more clear.
And then have the site plan with the revision date. And then I still have the architectural.
Original.
So
Okay.
there is A1 with floor plans and A2.
And those are the ones that were sent to you today.
Correct. Everybody and their brother will hear you. Okay, do you need that?
They're all fogging up. Every time I was looking down, I'm like,
You saw the one email that sent to you. So,
That one.
that and then.
That's been distributed.
Yes, that was also.
The planning too.
Yeah. It's definitely.
It's in there though.
Yeah,
Okay.
There it is.
Call that one. Oh, I didn't, I never saw that. Is that the one with the? Microphone.
Staff one, critical payment. Staff one. Staff and
Yeah.
commission funds.
I actually did this video. Yeah. He's a nice man.
Are you sure you take this?
Yes, absolutely. You may have.
Look at you. gonna talk me into it here. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. And I live in South Whitehall now, so I. Oh, yeah. That's quite a bit.
Everybody abandoned.
Oh, God.
As you.
So what do you do for a living?
Surgical device.
Oh. Who do you work for?
I work for but
So there's a difference between it being.
You work for John Hall.
And she should.
He works for the Jewish. Yeah. I'm not exempt, so he does, like implants?
I do implants as well. He probably does joints.
Yes, he does.
So I do trauma. Plates, screws, rods.
Yeah, I've had a few of those.
Yeah. So I do all that stuff. They do just joints.
Yeah, he does joints.
Yep. Oh, we cross paths with them.
He's one of my clients, that's why I
Oh,
asked, yeah.
Yeah.
So are you in, at St. Luke's, LVHM?
Yeah, so my territory is the whole entire Lehigh Valley. Lehigh Valley that has. Or just I've got to go is out to Oakland.
Okay.
Cool job. I've been doing it for about two months.
Okay, good for you.
Yeah.
And you went to Lehigh?
Yeah, I just graduated a few months ago.
Oh, wow, congrats, that's
Thank you.
awesome.
You're from the area?
Mhm. Are you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Born in Memphis.
Or did you go to Freedom or Liberty?
I went to
or
Becca. Yep.
So I used to be the solicitor for the diocese, so.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, oh, who's the guy at Becca that I dealt with all the time? He just retired.
Grasso?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mike Grasso.
That's my baseball coach.
Yes, I dealt with Mike a lot, and
I know very well.
Wendy Kristick and I are actually personal friends.
Yeah.
So we just hang out on a personal level. And then I did a lot, because I did schools, and I did all the CY 47s and child abuse stuff for them, so.
So how long have you been a warrior?
15 years.
Okay.
I'm at year 14.
Okay.
I do a lot of this.
Okay.
I average 2 or 3 hearings a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll use you again in the future.
Yeah.
Keep you in your business.
Yeah, not 2 to 3 a week. I also do some employment law on behalf of employers.
Yeah.
I don't do employee-sided employment law, employer-sided employment. So.
Jane, I'd like to go back on the record and I'd welcome a motion from a member of the zoning hearing board.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to approve the appeal of Adian Henninger to convert the 6-room boarding house into a 3-unit apartment dwelling, subject to the following, that he be able to obtain all permits from the city and all rights from the city with regard to the parking, as discussed during testimony, as a result of also in addition to the fire escape for the 2nd floor, and any other variants, any other changes that would be required with regard to conversion from a rooming house currently to a 3-unit apartment.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Piper, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Schneck,
No.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Novatnik,
Yes.
Mr. Shantz,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yes. Your appeal's been granted. I'd suggest you wait for the written decision. And again, the message which you had actually agreed to is all the other necessary contacts and inspections from the city, but we wish you well with the project.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I would like to add, while we were in executive sessions, there were no votes taken out there. And there were no deliberations or discussions regarding how the board would vote out in public.
Thank you. The next hearing is that of 3410 and 3412 Linden Street. Would you please come to the since I blundered on the last. Ernie sitting up here. All right, just as a housekeeping measure, can you tell us when the property was posted?
On the 16th.
Okay. We should be okay to go. Will all people either testifying or questioning in this matter, please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Piper, would you give us the facts of the case, please?
Two parcels, one located at 3410 Linden Street, the second at 3412 Linden Street. This is the appeal of Alan Un on behalf of West Broad Investments LLC to demolish the existing structure and construct 16 multifamily dwellings, which requires a dimensional variance to reduce the lot area per dwelling unit, 4,000 square feet required, 2,706 square feet proposed, or 10 dwellings permitted, 16 proposed. These two lots total 43,295 square feet, and both are located within the RG medium density residential zoning district.
Thank you. And I won't make the same mistake I made on the first hearing. I see you are represented by counsel.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Members of the board, my name is Jeff Fleischaker, Fleischaker, representing West Broad Investments LLC and Mr. Aoun this evening.
Okay, we can proceed.
Thank you. I guess as a preliminary matter, just an introduction, this is 2 units, 3410 and 3412, 2 parcels that with approval of the variance tonight and with some work before the planning board, the intention would be to combine the 2 parcels to one, to raise the existing dwellings on the parcel and to build a 16-unit apartment complex. We can use words tonight like high-end or luxury, but it's going to be something above the basic. It's going to be an intentionally well-mannered and well-suited and high-character apartment complex with the appropriate amount of parking per the ordinance. We are requesting of the board tonight one variance, and that's a density variance. The intent of the proposal is going to be, and Mr. Renko from the engineer on the project will testify too if necessary. The intention will be to maintain and to build within all the setbacks, all the right-of-ways on the property, but we do require a density variance, and such as the property as of right, 10-unit apartment complex could be constructed, as it's 43,000 square feet roughly, the 2 units combined. We need 4,000 square feet per unit for the ordinance. We were requesting a variance on the density to build 16 units. And I'll defer to Mr. Aoun during the testimony as to the reasons why on that. So, Mr. Aoun, can you identify yourself for the record, state your address and your relationship to West Broad Investments, please?
Yes, my first name is Alan Aoun, and I'm the owner of West Broad Investments.
I'm sorry, sir, your name again is?
First, Alan, last name is spelled A-O-U-N.
Thank you.
And my current address is 1619 A Street, Bethlehem, PA 18020.
And Alan, your first name is A-L-A-I-N, correct?
Yes.
And you're the sole member of West Broad Investments LLC?
Yes.
And West Broad Investments is the owner of the 2 parcels at 3410, 3412 Linden Street.
Correct.
When did you buy those?
April of 2021.
Okay. And how long had they been on the market before you purchased them?
Close to 2.5 years.
What was the purchase price that you paid for them?
$450,000.
Okay. The current, are there currently structure on the 2 lots?
Yes, 2 dwellings.
Are Craig, if you can pull up what that looks like, can you describe to the board what we're looking at here in the photograph?
Yes, we're basically looking at the two dwellings right on Linden Street. To your right is 3410, to your left is 3412, and in the rear there's a two-car garage.
Did you bring some additional photographs that you can show the board, not electronically, but you can show past to them as
Yes.
well, some blow-ups
Yes.
of what that looks like now? If it's okay, permission for Mr. Oden.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. You want to mark it?
I guess,
How do you want these marked?
yeah, I guess as a housekeeping matter, we'll mark these as A1 collectively, if that's okay, Attorney Malcolmus?
Do you propose to then go through them with letters or something, A1, A?
We can. To tell you the truth, as I sit here, I don't actually know how many photographs there are right there.
Okay, 2, 3, 4. It looks like A1 is a series of 5 photographs.
So if it's with your discretion, Attorney Malcolmus, A1 sub 1 through 5, but collectively is A1.
Okay.
Mr. Owen, did you take those photographs?
Yes,
And what do they depict?
basically it's the current property as it sits right now in the current condition.
And the current property, is it rental property? Is it vacant? What's the status of the property?
It's currently occupied with the existing tenants when I bought the property.
And how many units are there?
4.
And what size are they?
They're between 9 to 1100 square feet.
And they're 1, 2, 3 bedroom properties?
Currently 2 bedrooms.
So that's 4 2-bedroom apartments in that main structure?
Correct.
And there's no one that lives in the shed in the back?
No.
Is the shed utilized for any specific purpose?
No.
Is it empty?
Correct.
The vegetation on the property, mature trees,
Correct.
are they all in good condition?
Not all of them. Some trees need to be unfortunately taken down.
Because of natural occurring decay or rot with the tree?
Correct.
Is this 3410 or 3412?
It's the way the property is actually set up, it sits on the dividing line of the 2 lots. So it's the house itself is 2 units and it runs right down the middle of it.
Okay.
The property line does. I believe, as it is, 1/2, 2 units of the 4 units would be 3410 and 2 units would be 3412, almost like a row home. Mr. Owen, what is your intention here with this property?
Basically, my intention is to bring this property up to date. Unfortunately, the way it sits right now, it seems like it hasn't been taken care of in a long time. And we want to bring it up to date and bring some updated luxury apartments.
And how many luxury apartments are you intending to build?
16.
And do you require a variance of this from this board in order to build the 16 units?
Yes.
And what's your understanding of why?
Basically, we need a density variance based on the current lot size.
So the lot size, do you know off the top of your head how many units you could build in the without a variance?
Right now, we could build 10.
But it's your intention to build 16.
Correct.
Why?
Well, basically, the main reason would be a financial reason.
Okay. What do you, if you were to build 10 units on the property to the manner and the character that you wish that you would like to build, what would be the estimated cost for a 10-unit structure?
Approximately around $2.5 million.
And that includes the purchase price of the property?
No.
So your total investment for a 10-unit property would be about $3 million?
Correct.
And if you were to do that amount of investment in a 10-unit apartment complex on this property, would that be 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom units?
That would be basically 3 bedrooms.
Okay. So 10 3-bedroom units?
Correct.
And what would be the anticipated or necessary cost for rental of each of the 10 3-bedroom units in order to make sure that you're not losing money on such a building?
It would be approximately around $2,880.
So a 3-bedroom apartment for just under $3,000 a month?
Correct.
Have you done any market research regarding apartment costs in this area?
Yes.
And what has your research found with regards to the whether the market can sustain a $2,880 rental for a
It would be
three-bedroom?
very difficult.
Okay. So in your opinion, based on your research of this area, three-bedroom apartments at that cost and a 10-unit structure at this location would not be a sustainable model.
Correct.
Now, is this the only property you own in Bethlehem?
No, I own other properties.
What other properties do you, what are, you being Westbrook Investments?
Correct.
Or another?
I own another property off 1401, 1411 West Broad Street in Bethlehem.
And how many units are in that property?
Currently, that's a 5-unit with an empty lot next to it.
Okay. And all 5 units are occupied?
Yes.
Are there any 3-bedroom units in that property?
No.
Are there 2-bedroom units in that property?
Correct.
And what are the costs? What are the rentals for the 2-bedroom units in that property?
They're ranging between 17 and 1800.
Can you give some explanation to the board tonight of the work that you've done with regards to 1401 to 1411 West Broad Street with the interior and the quality and character of those apartments?
Basically, I bought the property about 5 years ago with the intention as well to kind of do something with the property. Unfortunately, the previous owner as well did not have the property up to date, so we took the property. It's a beautiful location if the board's familiar with the area. It sits right between 13th Avenue and 14th Avenue with a corner lot, and it's basically building that's built out of brick and it has just a really nice patina to it. And then we took all the apartments, updated them, finished all the hardwood floors, updated all the apartments, all the plumbings, everything needed to be done, and bought all the rents up to date and bought a lot of young couples into the area, professionals, and basically it's been a great investment.
Now, the quality and character of the 5-unit apartment complex at 1401 to 1411 West Broad, is that reflective of the kind of quality and character that you want to build in the 3410 and 3412 Linden project?
Yeah, absolutely.
And your intention with this new building is not to build lower quality or lower standard apartments, but to build something of a high quality.
Correct.
For the 1401, 1411 West Broad Street, it being in what you described as an up and coming neighborhood, the $1,700 to $1,800 a month for 2 bedrooms, is that about standard for that market?
Correct.
What would be the standard for the market for a 2-bedroom apartment in the area in which you're proposing to build at 3410 and 3412 Linden Street?
Around $1,800.
And that's the maximum?
Correct.
In order to have apartments, 2-bedroom apartments rent at a maximum of $1,800 per month in the manner and quality of build that you propose, how many units do you need to build at 3410 and 3412 Linden Street?
Right now we're looking at 16 units.
Okay. And what would be the total cost of construction based on your estimates to date of a 16-unit apartment at 3410, 3412 Linden Street?
The cost would be around $2.5 million as well.
And that's the same as to build 10 units?
Correct.
Why is it just as expensive or just as cheap, whichever way you want to measure it, to build an additional 6 units?
Basically, the footprint's going to be the same. With the 10 units, we have to expand to add more bedrooms, to 3 bedrooms to fill the space, and basically with adding basically all the heating and air conditioning and for the additional rooms and basically the plumbings and additional windows. So it would be pretty much the same. So one downsize it to 16 units, which would be more affordable to rent.
I believe what's on the screen is a architectural rendering of what the interior, the blueprint of a 16-unit apartment building would be. Attorney Malcolm, if we can mark this as A2.
Is that part of the board's packet?
It is.
At some point, I think we need to mark some of these documents, including some of the documents
Sure.
from the city, because I understand that there was a planning commission review.
Sure. What I was thinking of doing, just for the fluidity of the storytelling here, is I'll mark them as we use them. So
Okay,
looking
that's
at, we use the photographs for one. We'll use the interior blueprints as A2. That's okay.
Is that part of the
That's been,
site plan? Or is there a separate, or is that the fold out?
I believe that's part of the fold out marked A1 in the packet.
Okay.
It's got an A1 at the bottom right-hand corner, so we're going to call it A2 for the purposes of today.
Okay.
Is everybody okay?
We are.
So actually, A1 is now A2.
The whole world's upside down today. I apologize. Okay. So, Mr. Owen, if there were a hardship with regard to this property, your testimony to the board is that it's a financial hardship.
Correct.
And can you give us a bit of a narrative on the financial hardship, just to make sure that we're clear on what that is?
Basically, it would be for me to build a 10-unit with a 3-bedroom apartments, and to trying to collect $2,880 would be a very difficult task to do, based on the current area and location where the property is, and it's just a number that would just I haven't seen. I did the research; it's just not very applicable to find. It would be a lot easier to rent a 900 square feet apartment to 950, and to collect $1,800 a month for updated apartment than a 10-unit at 3-bedroom, $2,880.
And the character of the neighborhood in and around 3410 and 3412 Linden Street, how would you describe that?
Basically, it's currently surrounded with some commercial space. I believe if you stand and looking at the building, to your left, there's a commercial, seems a commercial rental place. And then to the right seems another property, which is basically, I believe it's a roofing office, a sales office for a roofing company.
So the image on the screen now, as we look to the right, that's to the right of the property where the cursor is, that would be some sort of commercial entity?
Correct.
And to the left, those are townhomes?
To the left, there's some bushes there, and I believe these are some existing townhomes, correct.
And then behind the property?
And then behind the property, I believe there's additional townhomes as well.
So converting this into a multi-unit apartment complex would not be, in your opinion, would not be changing the character of the neighborhood?
No, not at all. I believe it would be it's a good fit.
And in your opinion, not only would it be a good fit, would it also add to the character of the neighborhood?
I believe it'll add a lot of value. This is a main corridor to Bethlehem. I think we have highways, multiple commercial stores, and that's one of the main reasons I bought the property. I think it makes a lot of sense to have something there. And this is a very busy road and attracts a lot of businesses, and it would be, perfect idea for that.
Okay. Again, continuing in an upside down world, in the packet that you have before you, there's a series of elevation drawings that are marked A2 at the bottom right-hand corner that we're now going to call A3. Those. Mr. Piper, I do believe we also have some color drawings that had been submitted in a different format that we have blow-ups here as well that we can use. Attorney Malcolm, since these are two different pictures, what I'd like to do, 3 different pictures, is call these collectively as A3, a series of 3 photographs. The first being what's been marked as A2 in your package, which is a black and white elevation. And then what's in front of you now on the screen, there are 2 additional color drawings representing what the same thing, same elevation.
Actually, it looks like we have 4 color photographs in our packet.
Okay, well then I am fairly certain that they all 4 are depicting the same thing. So if we want to call it a collective A3 with 5 photographs, I'm certainly pleased with that as well.
A3.
A3 1, sub 1 through 5. Mr. Owen, did you bring physical photographs of the elevations of of a rendering of what the apartment complex would look like from the outside?
Yes.
Put them on the easel. Walk through that briefly.
Mr. Yoon, if you're going to testify from up there, will you take the microphone with you, please? Or you return?
We can. He's just going to set them up, and then we'll use it from
That's
here.
fine, and return to the desk. Okay.
Just finding sometimes it's easier to look at actual drawings than look on a computer. Mr. Owen, these are the photographs that you put up on the easel is identical to one of the photographs within the packet, I believe. We'll call it sub 3 of 5 an elevation drawing.
Correct.
And that's what you are proposing at this time, the 16 unit would look like.
Yes.
How would you describe the design?
Basically, we have a current layout of a modern look. And if you notice a lot of different colors and windows, basically the idea is to attract, the millennials who could easily afford these kind of rents, and then basically something modern, different look. We invest a lot. The idea would be investing a lot in, if you notice, windows and tempered glass and etc. I mean, there could have been an easier way. I could have easily just put smaller windows and just basically made it look very plain. But the idea is to kind of invest in Bethlehem and bring it to higher standards.
Okay. Attorney Makmas, with your permission, I think we'll mark as A4, a August 13th letter from the planning board addressed to the zoning board.
Okay, and just to make sure we have A3 right.
Sure.
A3-1 is the document that was with the packet marked as A2. And then A2 through 5 are the series of 4 color photographs of architectural elevations.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I believe it's the August 13th, 2021 letter addressed to the zoning hearing board members from Tracy Samuelson that I'd like to mark as A4.
Okay.
Mr. Owen, as part of this process, did we appear before the planning commission as part of a site plan review?
Yes, we did.
And you were present for that?
Yes.
A4, I'm going to show to you. Is this the first time that you're looking at this letter?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall the planning commission meeting?
Yes.
And do you recall the recommendations that the planning commission made to us with regards to this project?
Yes.
And are the numbers 1 through 5 of Exhibit A4 representative of the recommendations that they made for us to consider when moving forward with this project?
Yes.
And just so that we're clear, that would be the comments in the attached site plan review, which include a number of engineering, zoning, public works, and general comments that were addressed at the meeting. Relocating the parking lot to the rear should be considered. Site layout should be residential in character, including a pedestrian sidewalk or walkway access from the public sidewalk at the front to the building. Building facade should look residential in character, and then increasing the building height, consider increasing the building height to minimize the impervious surface area and potentially facilitate greater flexibility in the overall site layout. Do you recall those?
Yes.
And are you, as you sit here today before the zoning board, willing to consider those as we move forward in this project, making the changes that were recommended by planning?
Absolutely.
So it's possible that the site plan that's been presented to zoning tonight may not look exactly the same moving forward.
Yes.
Okay. With regards to the site plan, with the board's permission, I'd like to bring the engineer to the project who designed the plan, Joe Renko, to provide testimony.
I would like to conclude, though, with questions of this witness first.
However you want to proceed is fine by me.
That's what I would like to do.
So at this point, I have no other questions of Mr. Owen.
Okay. Questions from members of the board?
I'm okay at this time.
Mr. Steck.
Yeah, so in your testimony, you were saying the price for a 10-unit building versus a 16-unit building is roughly the same cost.
Yes.
But in that estimate, you're increasing the size of the apartments, right?
Correct.
So the footprint's the same.
Correct.
Did you look at decreasing the size of the footprint at all? And if not, like, why are you tied?
We didn't look at that option because we looked at the idea of having enough parking. It would be a waste to kind of downsize it, and we have the parking to fit 16 units on a spot. We didn't think about downsizing apartments because it would be just wasting a lot of footprint space.
Okay, so you were kind of looking at parking as your thing.
Motivation, correct.
Yeah.
That I have the parking.
Your limiting factor, I'm gonna say.
Yes.
Well, you did state that the current building is in kind of disrepair, so was it even a consideration to renovate and add on? Or did you look at that at all, or is the building?
Yes, definitely considered that, but when we consider that the amount of cost that would be, that we have to apply to it, it would just financially made no sense to it. And it was a very, very thoughtful process we went through, and it was just, it did not add up. The numbers did not add up.
Sure. I know you guys you have to go back to the planning commission and go through a couple more reviews, because I noticed the one comment about the facade being in residential character. So I don't know exactly how the planning commission is going to define that. And I don't know if they want to keep in with the surrounding area, but you would be okay with that if that was the
Absolutely, we
stipulation?
would work with the commission for whatever needs to be done. If that would be something that they would highly consider, that would be something that we could easily work with that.
And same thing with parking lot in the rear. And everything
Absolutely,
else.
we definitely played out a couple of options in mind in case it's something that we have to do. We have a plan B basically if we have to do that.
Okay, thank you.
If I can interject, the comment from planning was that one of the members believed that the current rendering looked too much like a hotel. And she wanted to see a little bit more of a residential feel with, I'm not exactly sure how to define it, except not like a hotel.
Sure.
So we're still working through that process to what not like a hotel looks like.
Yep.
But the purpose of providing the rendering today was to show you the quality of work that Mr. Owen is dedicated to doing for this project. Not just putting up a brick facade that just mirrors every other brick facade, but to really put some character and some high quality work into the property.
Yeah, it's a different type residential. I've seen stuff similar, but it's certainly not in character of what's surrounding it, in my opinion. But I'm not a designer either. So,
Me neither.
but as long as you guys are working with it, I have faith that
Thank you.
he'll guide you correctly.
Ms. Lee?
Okay, I have no questions.
Mr. Novotny?
Do you have only one driveway in and out of the project?
Currently we have one driveway going in and out, correct? Yes, I believe it's about 20 feet wide.
Have you had to have any discussions with PennDOT?
No, we have not yet. We
Will you
not.
have to have discussions with PennDOT?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
That's my only question.
One of the things, I'm sorry to interrupt again, one of the things that was discussed at planning was widening the driveway and also considering a one-way driveway around the property so that it limits or constructs a flow of traffic. Obviously, that's Linden Street being a state highway or state roadway. We're going to have to deal with a highway occupancy highway. That's a tough one for me to say late in the day, a hop. And we will obviously work with planning and work with any state agency that we have to make this work. But the goal is to widen the driveway to make it more accessible than it currently is.
Thanks.
Mr. Shantz?
I'm kind of curious with some of your testimony. When did you buy the structure again?
April 2021.
Was this the only intent that you had in mind at the time that you bought the structure?
No, my intention was basically to do an add-on. Basically, the first intention was to buy the property, update it, because unfortunately, as you see, actually, I just happened to be driving by one day and I got caught in traffic, as you know, afternoon traffic, and I just happened to look. I saw the building, there was a for sale sign. I just thought it was a shame that this building's sitting like that on such a, street, a busy road. And I made some contact phone calls, and basically that's how this happened. With knowing there was nothing planned yet, till basically I bought the property, then I laid down my options to see what can I do to bring this up to code and to bring it up to a decent looking property. And I laid down a couple of options, and goes back to the financial cost. It made sense to kind of just demolish the building and start new. Unfortunately, another main reason was the current situation of the building is just got to the point where it just too much repairs. Too many repairs.
Going back to the 16 units, did you realize that to put 16 units on, at the time of the purchase, at the time that you made your mind up to go with 16 units, did you realize at that point that you had to come before a board for the 16 units?
When I sat down with my engineer and architect, they said that if we have to do that, we need to go to a 16 to the board meeting, correct?
Did you have any contingency plans if we decided to not grant your request tonight for this unit, for this property?
No,
So it's 16 or nothing?
basically, we didn't, we like I said, we played, basically at this point, yes.
And you have no other plans at this point for other than 16 units, period?
I mean, I didn't lay down the options of any other ones. I don't see it would make any financial sense for me to do a 10 unit because it's just would be, I mean, I've been a landlord for about 18 years. I have multiple properties in different areas, and if something I could do, I would have just done it. And I just cannot do that. So I will have to go back to you know, replanning and figuring out what other options I would have.
If we were to say not 16, but 12,
I will have to, you know, end of the day, it all has to make financial sense. So if it does make financial sense to me, it would be something I would definitely consider, because at the end of the day, the burden comes on me because I'm putting, you know, the financial part of it, and it has to make sense. If it does, that would be definitely something I would do.
did you run the numbers for 12 or 14?
I did not run the numbers for 14.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we've established the only hardship is financial on your part.
Correct.
Correct. Part of the problem, and if either you or Attorney Fleischaker would clarify, there were a number of points that were raised in planning. The problem I have when I look at this, I cannot agree that that fits in the character of the neighborhood. And again, this is what you put in front of us. So can you tell me exactly, or give me some idea of what it is you're going to put in front of the Planning Commission? Because I just don't, for me, I don't think this is at all in keeping with the character of the neighborhood.
My idea was to bring something just different. Like every building you see goes up. It's very easy for me to put a building that's just basically, like we said earlier, and I have no problems doing that. I could easily put, you know, basically something that fits the character, smaller windows, basic classic look. That's not an issue for me. I just thought that if I'm bringing a modern apartments, everything's modern. I felt like the look should be modern as well. That was my approach. I'm not against, you know, the current character of the area. I live in Bethlehem. My house looks just like, you know, character house, basically based. But I just thought the approach would be that if I'm bringing highly upgraded apartments, should have some sort of a modern look to it. And what I noticed as well is a lot of people get attracted, people that rent and pay this kind of money want something that looks somewhat little different than the basic that's out there. That was just some of the research that I did, but I'm not opposed to working with the character of what would work.
And I do understand that this is something that will be represented to the Planning Commission as well.
And if I can address it
Yes, sir.
without changing it, but just legally massaging a little bit.
Sure.
There are a couple of ways to address what the word character of the neighborhood might, or the words character of the neighborhood. I think in one context, he's not proposing to put something that doesn't already exist on Linden Street. There are a number of multifamily, multi-unit complexes on the street, including one that just got approval, not there yet, 61 unit that just got approval through planning last month, or this month actually. So in that sense of the word character, he's not changing the character. Obviously the look is different, and we got some pushback from planning on that. And with that pushback is some humility of, okay, we have to go back to the literal and drawing board to make sure that we figure out a style that's acceptable to the community. And there's a commitment from Mr. Aoun and West Broad Investments to do that. The purpose of showing this model tonight is to show to confirm what Mr. Aoun testified to. He is looking to build a modern, high quality apartment complex that appeals to younger generations today that are not looking for the same old, as well as other people of other generations who are looking for something a little bit different in the price point that we're aiming for here. So I understand the difficulty in seeing that and me telling you that's not what it's going to look like. But these pictures best serve his vision, which is high quality and modern. We're going to tame it down and massage it and structure it and put it in a way that's acceptable to planning. We're committed to that. We can't avoid that. The variance we're seeking tonight from this board is reliant on that, but not necessarily reliant on that at the same time. We are committed to building something within the character of the community. We're committed to building it with and in partnership with the Planning Commission and the Zoning Hearing Board to make sure that it fits what everyone wants it to fit. That's not everyone's going to agree 100% of the time, but we're going to work hard to make sure we get something that everyone looks to and likes the way it looks. That answer it?
It does. Thank you for your clarification. I have no further questions. At this point, one last bite at the apple for everyone up here? Nobody. At this point, are there questions from members with us in chambers? If so, please come to the podium, identify yourself. Seeing no one, is there?
Wait.
Would you please come to the podium then? I'm sorry. Give us your name and address if you would, please.
Yes, thank you. My name is Tom Repash. I live at 1744 K Falcon Drive in the Eagle Trace condominium development, which sits at the back of the property in question.
Okay, Mr. Repash, this will be questions only. You'll have an opportunity to testify later.
How do you spell your name, sir? Your last name?
Repash, R-E-P, as in Paul, A-S-C-H.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
And just to say that I agree that what is proposed or what is in those diagrams does not fit the character of the neighborhood. But I wanted to question the landscaping plan. I noted that the applicant had made reference to some trees that are decayed or rotted, and I'm particularly interested in the back of the property, which I think might be the site of the building, because it abuts the property of Eagle Trace where I live, and is adjacent to a retaining pond there. So if he could maybe provide some additional information about the landscaping plan, I'd appreciate it.
Attorney Fleischaker, is this the appropriate witness to do that?
Yes and no. We can do it now. I can do it through Mr. Renko. I can do it through both. However, the board wants to do it. And the other thing I would caution us on is that, first of all, I haven't admitted the exhibit of the site plan, which we can do now with the board's discretion, and we can talk about it, but it may change. So we can talk about it based on its current outlet, the current way that it's been presented to the board, but understanding the Planning Commission, one of the things they asked us to consider is inverting the design of the whole thing, where the parking would be in back and the building in front. So the landscaping design that we've submitted as part of the application may change completely, but I'm more than happy to allow my client or me or Mr. Renko or whoever he would like, whoever best answers Mr. Repash's question.
I'm asking you to determine who would best answer the question.
I think what I'd like to do with the board's permission is have Mr. Renko address that question as we talk about the site plan, if that's okay. I do want to answer your question. I think the engineer might be better able to do that.
Yes, thank you. And I'm getting the sense that there may be another meeting on this sometime in the future, or
not with us. The way
okay, well, there's going to be some additional deliberations when a new plan comes forward, I guess, right?
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're okay. Was there anyone else? Go ahead, Craig.
I just want to add, anybody that signs the sign-in sheet, if there's another planning commission meeting, we'll make sure that you're notified of that meeting so you can participate.
Right. I thought we had another hand over here, somebody wanting to ask a question.
Well,
Sir?
I was going to make more just in the realm of commentary.
Okay, that'll come later. All right. Is there anyone else in chambers wanting to ask a question? If not, is there anyone with us virtually? If so, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Hearing no one, Attorney Fleischaker, did you have another witness?
I do. It's Joseph Renko, R-E-N-T-K-O, who's the engineer on the project.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Renko, can you introduce yourself to the zoning board, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Joseph Renko, professional engineer in Pennsylvania. I work for Black Forest Engineering, a small company that I started. And I'm here because I prepared the site plan, did some of the survey work for Mr. Round.
And the site plan that you're talking about that you're preparing, it went through a number of different changes. Was there a final site plan on which the application is based, perhaps one that was dated in July?
That's correct. July 15th was the the final concept that went in for the site plan, which we were told needed to go in for an official review with Planning Commission before we would have an opportunity to present this case to the zoning board.
Attorney Malcolm, I'd like to have this one marked as A5, if that's okay.
That's fine.
So the site plan that is now on the computer screens that's before the zoning board, this is the site plan that you developed in July prior to the Planning Commission meeting.
Correct, yep.
And this addresses the location, the proposed location at this time of the building, the parking lot, and as well addresses some landscaping questions.
Yes, yeah.
So the footprint of the building itself, which is the lighter shade building in the rear of the property, that goes out to the edges of the setbacks for the rear and side of the property?
Yeah, it actually touches both sides and the rear setback.
But it does not, it does not encroach on those setbacks?
It does not.
Okay, so as far as the rear and the side setbacks for the property, for the structure, the proposed structure, that's as big as it can get?
That is it. It is maxed out.
Okay. The parking in the front, let's see if I can do this right way. When you began work on this project, did you have an opportunity to review the City of Bethlehem zoning ordinance?
I'm familiar with the city's Saldo and zoning ordinance. I didn't really find anything that prohibited, necessarily in writing, prohibited any sections that prohibited the parking in the front of the building, but as you saw in the letter that the Planning Commission wrote, it came to our attention during that meeting that the planners strongly feel that parking is better served in the rear of the properties. It's a better feel. So it's this plan, again, this site plan was prepared to get us before the Planning Commission and before you, but we definitely know we have some work on this to make the Planning Commission happy.
But for the purposes of the zoning hearing today, the parking lot has enough spaces pursuant to the definition of the required number of spaces for a 16-unit apartment building.
Correct. We're providing 28 parking spaces. 2 of those are fully compliant van accessible ADA spaces.
And it also, the parking structure that we've put on the site plan also contains the required landscaping within the zoning ordinance for parking areas like this size?
Correct.
And regardless of the final shape and form of this project, the number of parking spaces pursuant to the zoning ordinance would be met?
Correct.
And the landscaping pursuant to this ordinance would be met?
Correct. Just to clarify though, this site plan, I don't want to say it's a sketch plan. It's a little bit better than a sketch plan, but that's essentially really what it is. So when we move through land development, there'll be a full landscape and lighting plan put together with a lot more detail, with actual vegetation and tree counts, what types and things like that. So what's provided before the board tonight, it's more of a schematic to show, listen, we're providing the required buffer yard around the parking and around the building, and there is going to be, Mr. Allen's going to plant plenty of vegetation and screening.
And the proposed zoning, the site plan that's before the board now, the parking structure, the parking lot that's proposed, doesn't require any side, rear, or front setback variances?
No, we laid this out to comply and really not need any dimensional variances.
And if the structure itself was to move from 16 with a variance to 10 by right, would the parking lot be any smaller?
We would lose some we wouldn't need 28 parking spaces. So it would become a little bit smaller, but we still have the 24-foot driveway, required driveway, the 4-foot aisles, the islands we'd still have. So it would become a fraction smaller.
And when you say a fraction smaller, you mean nominally smaller?
Yeah.
Okay, not 1/2, which is also a fraction?
No.
Okay. So the size of the structure that's been proposed as a 16-unit complex is as large as can fit in the space that's given of the two lots, 3410 and 3412 Linden Street.
I believe so, yes.
That is as large as it can be with an attached parking structure
Okay.
that's required.
Correct.
And if asked to move that 16 unit to the front and the parking to the back, that calculation wouldn't change. We would not be able to enlarge the size of the structure.
No, no.
Okay. Now, the site plan we've presented does indicate some landscaping, and there was a question from Mr. Reposh regarding the landscaping at the rear of the property. Just assuming the site plan as it is, if this were to be approved by planning, can you give the board and Mr. Reposh and any other citizens present hoping to hear information about how the landscaping and the buffer in the back of the property would be addressed, as well as those landscaping buffers on the side of the property to any neighbors?
Sure. Well, like I said, as we move this project through the land development process, we will be required to put together a full set of engineered plans that have a lot more detail than what's before the board tonight. We will have to comply with the actual landscaping requirements of the ordinance. So there will be specific amount of mature trees or trees of a certain caliper size that will be required to be planted. Just for schematics, I'm showing that we do have that 15-foot buffer around the outer property line there, and that's kind of where we would put the Plan Commission will require sufficient screening and plantings. So as we move this hopefully through the planning process, that's where we would work with the planners and hopefully the community to make sure that we're designing a site that everybody's happy with.
I don't think I have any other questions for Mr. Renko at this point.
Okay, thank you. Questions from members of the board? Ms. Stone?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the shrubbery, but you've answered my question.
Thank you. Mr. Schneck?
Yeah, one thing that I think the Planning Commission again is going to require, but maybe, how are you lighting your parking lot?
There's definitely going to be lighting, and I haven't worked this out because again, we don't have a lighting plan in front of us yet, but I imagine it's maybe going to be a combination of maybe some wall packs for lighting, but then also maybe a post depends. We're gonna flop. So I don't want to get too out of direction here with your question, but originally when we kind of got together to lay this out, we thought the parking would be a good idea to have in the front because we thought from a safety perspective, it's a little bit more open. There's traffic that would be going by and it's going to be bright there. And we were kind of reserved to put the parking in the rear of the building where it's potentially going to be a little bit darker. So we do understand the comment and the concerns from the Planning Commission that they really want to have this building up on the front of Linden and, this really nice site. So with us moving the parking in the rear, I think, I don't want to speak for Mr. Allen, but I think we will definitely go above and beyond with making sure that that parking lot is lit up so that the potential renters feel safe and secure.
And yeah, that's great that you're going to light it, and I'm assuming your entry path is going to also need to be lit.
Correct. Any sidewalks, and that was one of the other comments from the Planning Commission that they want this connectivity from our parking area to out to Linden Street for a walkable route. So really any of the walkways that we put in on the site, ideally we would want to have, at least provide at least one lumen of light on.
So one of my concerns for the neighbors would be that your landscaping and the type lighting fixture you're using won't be on in their windows all night long.
Right.
So as long as you're working with the Planning Commission, I believe they'll require that, and we may make that a stipulation that all lighting is screened from any neighbors.
Right. That's a good comment. It's a very common comment, and usually with the engineering staff, what they'll do is they'll require us to provide a lighting plan that shows the lumen pattern, and they can measure the foot candles that are kind of dispersed and make sure that we're not pushing any of it over the property lines. So again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's something that we will definitely be providing during the Planning Commission process.
And would you also look into, they also make light poles with motion sensors that come on brighter.
Yeah.
I don't know how expensive they are.
And if I can interject, I'm hoping that that question allows us to give a better answer to Mr. Reposh's question as well, which is if we're required to really illuminate a rear parking lot, it's going to require us also to make sure the landscape buffer really makes it a separate property that you don't know it's there, because the intention is not to make sure that we light up everyone's house. If they're motion sensors, if someone comes in at 11 o'clock, the whole neighborhood doesn't need to know.
Yeah. So yeah, correct. I'm after the design concept of what you're trying to achieve. And if you're trying to achieve sheltering yourself from the neighbors and not bothering them, that's the important part.
And that's the goal.
And then I don't know if it matters at this point, but I believe going from 10 to 16 significantly reduces your parking lot. This is my opinion.
I would say a third.
Yeah, or you're like.
How's that, a third?
Yeah, 65%. Yeah, you go from 28 to 18, I think.
If I could comment on it, if we go to 18, the problem is not that we're losing 10 spots, it's that we can't put 18 spots horizontally across the property. So we're still going to have to two-tier the parking lot, which while we may gain a little bit of space, it's not usable space for the purpose of build. The purpose of me asking that was to show that the plan that we have together is as big as we can make the 16 unit structure.
You're saying it's the best use of what you have.
It's the best we can do.
Okay.
That if we go down from 28 to 18 parking spots, yeah, we reduce the number of parking spots, but we still have to have, we can only have 13 in a row by width. So we still have to have a second row. If we have a second row, but it's only half, it's essentially just going to be additional landscaping that's provided, maybe a longer driveway route to it. It's not going to be able to, we're not going to be able to substantially expand the building structure itself. That was the point of the line of questioning.
That's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Schneck. Thank you. Ms. Lee?
I have no questions.
Mr. Novotny?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of the first witness? Or are we finished with him?
Yeah, of course you can.
I have no objection to that, no.
And it's for clarification purposes. When you purchased this property, the previous owners, did they tell you how many units it was zoned for?
No, they didn't.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is I really think this property was the subject of a hearing before this board a little while ago, and we did establish a number of units.
He, unfortunately, my understanding was the owner was ill at the time. And unfortunately, through the process we're going right now with what's going on with the world, it was very hard to communicate with him. And I actually did not meet him. I had to pay some closer to go to his private residence. So we didn't really have too much interaction with the owner.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we're going to change chairs again, if you don't mind.
This is
Mr.
exciting.
Shantz.
I have one major worry and concern all of a sudden. Am I understanding you correctly that planning may require you to put the building in front and the parking in back?
They've asked us to consider it. They haven't made it a requirement yet. It's part of a long process of consideration, but yes, they've asked us to do that.
If that were to become a reality and the parking were to suddenly have to be accessed by the rear, and there's a condominium complex behind the building, would that require then to be at least one or two drive aisles to be put alongside the building in order to access that parking in the rear?
Yes.
Yeah, were you asking, I'm sorry, were you asking me or Mr. Fleischaker?
Yeah, the engineer, please.
Yeah, we would definitely need access from, we would still need, there's only one access from Linden Street. So to get to that parking lot, there would have to be access around the building. If we were to be able to work that parking and fit it in the rear of the building like the planning commission requested.
And if the footprint of the building were to stay the same regardless of the number of units that would be approved tonight for it, would an extra drive lane aside those buildings bring you closer to the boundary lines of the neighbors next door on both sides?
I'm sorry, could you just explain that one more time? So there's right now, the way the building's set up right now, we're at the side yard setbacks, there's 20 feet on each side of the building. So
okay. There's 20, would you have enough room then for a drive lane here, a drive lane here in order to access if this were suddenly reversed, the building's here, this is Linden Street. building's here. You have a drive lane, you would have probably have a drive lane here to get to the parking lot. Would you have enough room to not require you to come back to the board for a variance for side yard setbacks for the driveways?
Yes, I want to say informally after the meeting with the planning commission, I kind of looked at this on my own time at a layout, if this was even possible to try to entertain this and get the planning commission what they wanted. So what I laid out was we kept the size of the building. We moved the building towards Linden Street. And again, this was rough, quick and crude. Basically flopped the parking in the building. And if we do a one-way driveway we could do a one-way driveway around the building. So one way, it's a two-way driveway connected to Linden Street, and you basically would travel right around the building into the parking lot, where then it opens back up to a two-way, and then a one-way out on the left side of the building. I think to answer your question, I hope to answer it, we wouldn't need any other variances.
Okay, so you would have, okay, because that would be almost a concern of mine, because if they flip the buildings and you had to come back a second time.
No, so the goal right now was to keep the variance request to a bare minimum. We didn't want any variances, but there's no way I could kind of work us out of the density issue because we're stuck with the size of the lot that Alan bought. But right, so looking at this again from an engineering sketch, I believe that I made it work. I think that we could make this work and accommodate it. I haven't done any of the grading yet, so where we actually make the slopes work, and so I don't know if we're going to get into a position where maybe we need a little bit of a retaining wall or a landscape wall, but from a sketch perspective, we definitely could fit the parking, the building, and the two one-way drives in without any other relief from the ordinance.
Thank you very much. Sure.
Done?
I'm done.
Oh. Sure, thank you. Just a quick question. Have you given any consideration to emergency vehicles coming on the lot?
That it's something that I think we just very briefly just touched on in the planning commission level.
So that has not been developed, would I be correct?
It's not yet, no.
Okay, thank you. I have no other questions. At this point, I would open up the floor for questions from members of the audience. First, those with us in chambers of this witness. Any questions? Please come to the microphone. Identify yourself and give us your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Kazik. That's spelled K-S-I-A-Z-E-K. And I'm K-S as in Sam, I-A-Z-E-K.
And before you testify, Mr. Kazik, I think this would be a good time to put in the record that the board did receive an email that was forwarded to, I think it was to Mr. Pfeiffer. And I think a copy of this was sent to council, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, council, have you seen his letter?
I have, yes.
Okay, can we mark that as 01? Has the board seen this yet? I can pass it down then.
If you would.
But since we've received it, it's important that it become part of the record.
Okay. Why don't you proceed with your question, please?
Thank you. It was more of a comment I thought we were asking, but.
No, these are questions of the testimony yet, please.
Okay, well, maybe I will.
I promise I'll bring you back
okay.
and allow you to wax eloquently. And anyone else with a question at this point? Anyone with us virtually wanting to ask a question of the testimony just delivered, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Seeing none, do you have additional witnesses?
No.
You do not. All right, at this point, I would then welcome any testimony or comments from members of the audience. So why don't we give you a quick return trip? And I hope you didn't forget what it is you wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am one of Tom Repash's neighbors at Eagle Trace at 1744. And specifically, my unit is the one at the furthest end, which would actually abut or be closest to the property in question here. There was just a couple, I found out about this project about 2 weeks ago or whatever through your mailer. Just a couple things. I just want to say, as a resident of the area, I very much agree. And I think that the character of that specific sort of micro neighborhood has been a little bit mischaracterized here. It's very much residential. And I would say that we have a very, I think, hard-fought calm within our condo community and the surrounding streets and whatnot. So just to add, 16 units in this particular property, I thought was, I was shocked when I heard it. A couple of things now. Mr. Ayoun, I think you mentioned that you had seen the property originally when you were sitting in traffic. And that's something I think you need to keep in consideration as well when we're looking at the density of what we're looking to alter at this point in time. The traffic in that particular area, specifically around Linden and Oakland, can get very, very heavy at certain times of the day. It's almost impossible sometimes to make left-hand turns out of Falcon Drive onto Linden at certain times, just by the way the traffic patterns exist and the way they're timed there. And there are times when traffic heading north out of Linden, as you pointed out there, can get very heavy, and you're sitting there for quite some time. So to add another, 16 units at this point with the requisite number of cars, if we're talking about the young professionals that putatively are going to be occupying these units, everybody's got their own car at this point, at least. So I think that the traffic alone is going to be prohibitive here. As I said, noise issues. It's been an issue at certain times in the past, besides others. At very least, I'm the first one to agree that the property, the house on the property is very old. That's a given. But again, the type of unit that's been put up here, I didn't think it was a hotel so much. It looked to me like a Shake Shack. It's just again, architecturally, the character is out of touch with the particular neighborhood itself. So with that, I'm perhaps receptive to other ideas, smaller in scale, but it sounds like this is being driven by financial purposes only at this point. The last comment I'm going to make is that while the building to the south of the property, it was characterized as commercial, I believe one of the concerns in that building, it's a very low slung, sort of mid-century modern looking building. It's a feeding therapy place. It's Advent Therapy, which is designed for, I believe, providing therapy for children and infants and adults who can't eat or whatever. So when you call it commercial, that again, even that may be a mischaracterization. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Before you leave, Attorney Fleischaker, did you have any questions of the testimony?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify, sir? And again, I'm going to ask you to identify yourself again when you get to the microphone.
Yes, thank you again. My name is still Tom Repash. I live at 1744K Falcon Drive. I'm a neighbor of Steve's. And I'd just like to say I support his comments regarding the characterization of the neighborhood. It's primarily residential. And the condominiums that are behind it at Eagle Trace, there's about 20 units in my development, and off to the, I guess that would be the north, would be another 20 or 30 or more townhouses that look very much like the ones that Steve and I live in. I just wanted to say I support the City Planning Commission's recommendation to put the building in the front of the property and the parking lot in the back. I'm supportive of high quality development. And I think that portion of Linden Street has some derelict buildings, including the one that Mr. Ione bought. I do have concerns, as Steve mentioned, about the traffic. He wants to put 16 units there. A lot of cars turning out into Linden Street, which seems to me is heavily congested and unimproved, and facing even more development down Linden Street as it approaches Route 22. I think some of you probably are familiar with the congestion there with the warehouses and the trucks that go through. So I just wanted to support the City Planning Commission's recommendations, and it's a little hard to comment on other things on the site plan because obviously it's going to change, and we'll come back to it when they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Fleischaker, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in chambers wishing to testify in this matter? Seeing no one, I would make the same invitation to anyone with us virtually. Please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Hearing no questions, Attorney Fleischaker, did you have closing remarks?
Yes, please. Thank you. I want to thank the board tonight for their attention. This took a little longer than I thought it might. I appreciate everyone's questions tonight and attention to the detail. I would also start with two apologies, which is not usually the best way to start a persuasive argument. The first would be that the plans that we've put up tonight don't adequately represent what the future of this construction is going to look like. We are in the middle of what is an interesting 2 to 3 to 9 step process with planning and with zoning on this project. And the intention was to give an idea, the best idea that Mr. Ione and West Broad Investments could come up with. And we have tried to reflect that we are willing to alter and amend the presentation of that as fits the zoning board as well as the planning commission of Bethlehem. In an ideal world, we would have had some more time to present it in a different way so that we'd have planning's insight and as to what the best design would look like. Don't have that tonight, and I apologize for that first. The second apology is regarding some of the community comment. To the extent that we mischaracterized the neighborhood, it was not intended to do so in any way to cause insult. The purpose of this construction is residential in nature. So the fact that the two community constituents stood up and reflected this was a residential community only suits the argument that this is not out of the intention here is not out of the nature of the community. It's not out of character of what is surrounding it. I understand that the building next door may not be a true commercial use in the firm of when you close your eyes and think of commercial, but it is. It's not a residential use either. The intention here is to construct a use that fits within Bethlehem, that fits within the 3400 block of Linden Street, that fits within the Eagle Trace condominiums that abut this property to the rear and to the, I guess we've defined it to the north and the east. And that's what Mr. Ione is intending to do. And if the board sees fit to grant the variance tonight for density to build a 16-unit complex, Mr. Ione is committed to working with the Planning Commission on finding all the answers to the questions that we couldn't answer tonight, with regards to lighting, with regards to traffic, with regards to flow, with regards to the placement of the parking lot. This is going to be a process that we invite the community to come help us build something that everyone can be proud of, not just Mr. Ione, but everyone who abuts the property. With regard to the specific variance that we're requesting itself, yes, the hardship that we're noting for the board today is a financial hardship. The building costs have exploded in the last 2 years, not the least of which because of some shutdowns in lumber mills and other things. Mr. Ione is trying to, as an investor, he's trying to make sure he makes money and not loses money on a project, and to build a 10-unit, which would be he could do by right, in this, these two parcels would not be financially viable based on the character of what he wants to represent himself to be, not only as a Bethlehem resident, but as a Bethlehem investor. He wants a high quality product. He wants a product that he wants to put his name on, that he'd be proud to live in. And to do that, it's going to cost money. Curiously, and the reason that we moved from 10 to 16 is that the construction costs, the difference between 10 and 16 is not all that much. I believe his testimonies are exactly the same. Will they end up being exactly the same? I think that's a myth to believe that, but it's close enough that it makes sense to say it tonight for the board. If we build 10 units there at that cost, at $2.5 million, the cost of rental is prohibitive and no one's going to live there. Not at the quality of unit he wants. He could put a 10 unit, he could put a 10 unit that is of lower quality, that maybe the rents manage, maybe he makes a few dollars off it, but that's not what he wants to do. That's not the pride he takes in himself. That's not the pride he takes in Bethlehem, and that's not the pride he takes in what he wants to provide for the people there. So instead, we need a variance to build a few more units in the same footprint for 10 as would be for 16, a more dense space in order to make sure that this project of Pride is feasible. I know there are concerns with traffic, but as a unit that is, as a project that would be as of right with 10, the traffic, the left-hand turns onto Linden Street would always be a problem even if you built it as 10. The difference between 10 and 16 is fairly nominal, I would suggest. And also something the Planning Commission has identified, and we will have to work with the Planning Commission on a traffic study more likely than not, as well as getting the HOP to make sure that the driveway extension and expansion can work. There'll be additional lighting on the roadway, which would make the roadway safer. And he'll be working within the community to make sure that everyone's proud of this project. Again, just to close, this is a single variance. We're not looking to expand into the neighbors. We're looking to keep within the setbacks. We just need a variance regarding density to make sure that we have a project that's fiscally viable. And in this process that will continue with planning, Mr. Owen is committed to and dedicated to making sure that this is something the community can be proud of. That's it.
Thank you. Attorney Malcolm, is there anything we need to do to put on the record yet?
No.
Piper, anything?
I guess I moved technically that we have everything that I've introduced as an A1 collectively, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then I'll move for the sake of moving that 01 also be admitted to be part of the record.
Thank you. Gene, we're going to go off the record at this point. My feet up in whatever wires. Craig, if you ever need all the wires torn out, just let me sit here for a while.
Who usually keeps the exhibits? Does Eric usually take them with him? Or do you keep them?
Actually, I typically do, but I can't.
I'll tell you what, can you, if you kept them, can you get copies printed and email them?
Yes, absolutely.
Every time, yeah.
What I do.
Oh.
They're still live, so if you're like, sure, you know, that's recorded, so. It is. If we.
Yeah, that's fine. Take them. You know, Craig, I can give you back your, I'm sure at some point in the next month, I'll get it in the mail. It's interesting that Joe didn't get it either. This Sorry.
Oh, did I see that about Craig?
Yeah. We can take it back.
Okay.
Yeah, I took them digital. I have some of them here. You can have them. Yeah, yeah, right here. Oh, I gave them to the board, actually. They have them. Those are there. Yep.
Craig, did you prefer them in PDF? Why don't you send them, either convert them to PDFs and send them to me, right? Just send them to me and I'll convert them and send them to me.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. There's actually like 5.
It's just those 5.
Yeah, you can have,
You take the hot seat.
Consider that. We give him that.
And that's the reason. Of the 19th.
He was able to do it. Yeah, that's why I didn't think about it. Yeah, he was at. Mess around with, it's only residential properties. Residents. Also just. I think just his age and his health was not good. We'll give you 12, 13.
They can come back. For conditions. It's a bunch of certain. Wait, that's what it is.
I mean, planning was okay with the idea. I reckon it's.
I'd like to be going.
They sometimes goes later.
I burned through it. I'm gonna burn through it. I want to get this out.
Lines.
Want us to come back or?
We mean,
Is this, if they're gonna,
the next one's gonna be.
that takes 9.
Which shows it.
Because I can do this still, but I can march through it. I got an outline.
No, I know. Usually with the stuff that we'll have to go for.
Fred?
Yeah.
My only concern is here.
Yeah, this is bullet.
This is nothing good for September.
Okay, gotcha.
And, I want to talk to him.
Does it take time?
Oh, yes. It's great for practice.
That Carl Long, I can't tell what that is. It's hard for me to tell. It doesn't matter. So what did you want? Tracy said something about the doctors and the service. What do you want to do with So you can have with me.
I got a lot of.
You know, I'll work.
Sorry, no problem. And I'll be in touch. Yep, thanks.
Vendors with major insurance companies.
Just hang on a second. I got
Do something else.
It's unmuting their microphone.
December 2012, I booked a one-way ticket to Syria.
Unless someone's a ventriloquist, I'm not sure. That could very well be. Gene, I'd like to go back on the record, please. And Attorney Malcolm is with you.
Yes, again, the board met in executive session and there were no votes taken, no decisions made. I would ask applicant's counsel at this point whether the applicant would be agreeable to having some of these issues resolved in planning and then coming back and making a presentation based upon whatever changes are going to be discussed and or implemented as part of the planning process and have the vote of the board and the decision of the board taken then. And in order to do so, obviously, the board would require that the applicant agree on the record to a waiver of any time limitations, including but not limited to the scheduling of the next hearing, because that would be an indefinite process, as well as a waiver of the board's requirement for rendering a decision. The board has questions that that it was not able to come up with answers to, and that being the case, I think it's a sense of the board that it would like to have some of these questions resolved before making a decision, but the board is prepared, as I understand it, to make a decision if that's what the applicant wishes.
Can I ask 2 points, I think? The first would be, as a clarification, you're asking if the applicant would be willing to grant what is in essence an indefinite continuance of the application to resolve the questions that were presented in the August planning letter with regards to placement and design of the structure?
Yes, unless, I mean, just kind of thinking out loud, unless you had some other thought, you know, it could be that the board would be granted a certain period of time, but then obviously under those circumstances, the board would have to render a decision whether these questions were resolved in planning or further development plans were discussed and decided upon.
And the other question I have is just from a procedural question, would planning be willing to have, are we able through whatever processes through the, I guess the MPC and the Saldo with Bethlehem to get back before planning without a decision on the variance from zoning? Because I was under the impression with planning that they required a decision from zoning before we go back. If he were to agree to that, I need some sort of affirmation that we're actually able to continue the land development process without approval from zoning, which seems like an odd way to proceed.
Well, I can't answer that, and I can't speak for what would be required of you in Saldo.
Right, well, it's if he agreed to the continuance, what's to stop planning from saying we're not going to consider it until you get the variance, and then we're back here on whatever agenda we make it to just for a decision? I guess to the extent that
you agreed to waive the deadlines, the deadlines would only be waived until you instructed the board in writing that you required a decision. And then at that point, the board would have the normal time constraints to render its decision, which would be 45 days.
Okay.
That would be considered the quote unquote last hearing from which we would measure the board's obligation to enter its decision.
So begging the forgiveness of everyone in the chamber for what I'm about to ask, can I have a couple of minutes to consult with my client on that issue?
That was going to be what I offered next, is you might want to consult with the client.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to him outside, and I really ask everyone's forgiveness for having to extend this any more
not
time.
at all.
So,
While you're doing that, why don't we take a formal 10-minute break so everybody can check on hydraulic pressure or whatever? Anyone else here?
All right, thank you. I
And
appreciate it.
we'll hopefully resume at 8:15.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I need an excuse to get out of the job.
They could do that. What if they, what if they accomplished and, at least this way they can keep the filing open and not have to, pay another filing fee. Yes.
Okay, with you?
Hey, Charlie.
No, I'm supposed to be at the pool. My kids
One of the stipulations.
Yourself.
Yeah. I'm tired of sitting.
I was assistant controller, so.
Okay.
And we counted each other PPL.
Oh, no. I see him once a year. I'd rather see where folks go at it.
Yeah, right. It was good seeing you.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. The whole church right here, too. You jump and get back to him. That's why they just keep me around. The property right up there. Also, we repurposed the building. But it's still fine. It's all just sealed. That's what should be done. And this one fits. Yeah, it's 16 acres. You're talking. One thing that takes the driving light bulb down when you have 31. You never know. Yeah, that's what he was. No, I told you what it is. No.
It's over here. Yeah.
Is the city with that? No, the man for office has been contracted. Never have enough work practices are today. You know it better than anybody. What's your plan? You're still working from home. Sure. Infrastructure set up where I got right. It's seamless. That's the one. Not anymore. She graduated. She's now a junior. Coming with the chart. She went K through 12. Me. Valley Academy. Kathleen Brown, I come up here. Involved in the yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got the.
It's all dependent. About a year after that. You're fresh enough too. It's so perfect. So I get to get started.
I never noticed it. Yeah. I never noticed it.
Yeah, 10:30. I think the intent will be to try and get all four of them in tonight.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing? Yeah.
What? Yeah, okay.
Interesting to know. Yeah. Yeah, same here. No.
Your turn. Your turn. Thank you. They want us to go through.
I thought so too. But I knew,
What kind of people you bring with you here?
but I knew he was in the Hershey Park today with his kids, so.
Well, they have this additional process that was required.
Yeah, like. Board's gonna be worn down. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's for you. You're my favorite.
So far.
That's the addition.
Signs of the name, and it's- Yeah.
I'm not really sure. Because I'm going to disclose that I affiliated with a charter school, but I have no business.
You see, the two guys
No. We can certainly raise that with the board.
I think, because I think this next one, I think these guys are presenting virtually.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's sitting where as far as this next one goes, is opposers.
Well, I assume what's left is here basically because
Yeah.
of the schools.
Oh, sure, that's fine. Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Mark,
I get back to, but I'll do it.
I prefer, if you can find a way to stay on, I think. You make it strong.
No, let's. It's part of the process.
Are we still live?
So everybody needs to talk. I have to go back to the damn.
Yeah.
Hey, Craig, did I understand that the third one is being presented virtually?
It's a little different. The classes.
Third appeal?
So I've been doing a lot of Zoom on.
They're just not represented. Okay, right, okay, thank you.
So, but you missed the people.
Seems like everybody needs Mark's time.
Both the part of walking and yoga. I mean, that's good, but I need a little more. That's starting to hurt. Last one may not be pretty either.
All right, good deal.
I don't know why it's an issue.
I don't either.
All right, Gene, I'd like to go back on the record. Attorney Malcolmus, will you direct us on how we're proceeding?
Yes, I think we're waiting to hear back from the applicant as far as what their preference is as far as continuing this hearing or this appeal to allow the some of the different issues that they're still kind of up in the air and unresolved at this point to be resolved through further interaction with the city planners.
Okay, and I have had the opportunity to discuss it with my client, and I have two general concerns that I'm hoping that we can answer before I say yes. The first is whether the ask from the zoning commissioner through Attorney Malcolmus is that we go through the entire land development process, or if there are specific questions that this board would like us to answer. Using as a hypothetical, the highway occupancy permit is part of the land development process. If we need to do that process before we can come back to the board, or what is if I can identify the 5 points of the August 13th planning letter to the zoning board as the issues that we need to address before we come back. I would like to have some guidance as to the specific issues that this board would like us to address so that I know when we can come back.
Well, I mean, as far as again, the zoning board isn't involved in land development. It's not involved in the referral that was made to planning. So I mean, I think they need to. I think the concern, again, that was discussed in executive session was that I perceived that at least the majority, if not the whole board, was concerned that they didn't have enough information. There were too many undeveloped aspects of the development, so to speak, that really haven't been decided yet at this point, council. And I think to some extent, the board felt some discomfort not knowing, for instance, whether the parking lot was going to be located in the front or the back. And if it was going to be located in the back, what the consequences to the development would be associated with the parking being in the back. Is that going to reduce the density of the building? Is one drive aisle going to work? Is that going to be sufficient, for instance, for emergency vehicles? And having thrown that out there, I would also suggest that perhaps there may be some concerns regarding the density of the development. And to the extent that some of these issues can be addressed, then maybe density doesn't become as much of a concern, but that's still out there. And I think that the sense I was getting, the questions that the board seems to have is that because of the still undefined aspects of this development and the repeated representations, we want to work with the city, we want to answer these questions. I think the board felt, and specifically the representation, although we're putting plans in front of you, we have to give you some kind of idea where we're going here. These may not be the ultimate plans of development. And I think the board really had discomfort considering the application without that definition that in effect, the plan that they're receiving here tonight is the plan or substantially represents the plan that's ultimately going to be the plan that the developer wants to utilize either by his discretion or through his further interaction with the city planning process. I don't know if the board wants to add anything or any of the members of the board want to add anything, but that's the sense I was getting in executive session.
I think I'm okay with that explanation. I understand the limitations of the board and what they're looking to ask for. Secondarily, I would ask that we can stipulate that should what we'll call an extended preliminary site review from planning not be able to procedurally be scheduled, that we can, with notice to Mr. Pfeiffer, I can get back on the agenda with this project with the right to reopen the case in chief to present additional evidence, hoping to answer those questions without planning commission input if we're not able to get it.
Yeah, and I would recommend that. I think that makes perfect sense.
It's fine.
Seemingly making a two-prong continuance. One is that we continue it until we get planning input, or two, if not available, we continue it until we come back with additional evidence to address these concerns about the uncertainty of the design of the project. And if that's okay with the board, I think that's okay with Mr. Owen, and I can have him confirm that once I get confirmation that those two ideas are what the board is thinking.
Again, that would be, I think the board should take a vote on that, but my recommendation would be that would be a reasonable request.
May I poll the board, the voting members? Mr. Schneck, are you in favor?
Yes.
Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Novotny?
Yes.
Mr. Shantz?
Yes.
And the chairman is in favor as well.
So what I would propose to do, council, is I would address a letter serving as notice of the board's action tonight, indicating that that it's my understanding that there's been a general extension of all time deadlines, which could be applicable, including but not limited to the scheduling of the next hearing and the rendering of a decision as those requirements are defined by the municipality's planning code, and further that the case will not be rescheduled for further hearing until we receive direction from you requesting that the case be scheduled for a further hearing. And at that point, then the board would schedule a further hearing within 45 days and render its decision as well within 45 days, provided that time limitation is measured from the next hearing, since you're reserving the right to present further testimony and evidence. So for instance, if Mr. Pfeiffer scheduled a hearing December 1st, that's when the 45 days would commence running.
That we would be stipulating that this is not the final presentation of evidence at that.
Okay.
I guess then, Attorney Malcolm, you'd be indicating that letter to me with a copy to planning for the purposes of giving me an opening with Tracy to.
Yes, I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure what the protocol is here, but I will certainly get it to Mr. Pfeiffer. And my experience with Mr. Pfeiffer is I'm sure he's going to get it to whoever needs to get it, including Darlene and or Tracy and or any particular body that needs to get a copy of it.
Okay. So I'm taking the board's confirm that. I'll have Mr. Owen confirm his consent to that. That way we don't need a stipulation. Mr. Owen, do you consent to the conditions that Mr. Malcolm has laid out as best you understand them?
Yes.
And to the extent that the board is granting a continuance, normally further advertising isn't necessary as long as there's a date certain. Now, we don't really have a date certain here, and I'll have to discuss that with Mr. Pfeiffer, whether or not it has to be re-advertised. Certainly, I think if anybody had any interest in this application, they would be here tonight. Is that an acceptable condition to the extent that we conclude that further advertising would be necessary, that the applicant would agree to the further advertising of any additional hearing?
So I guess that request is whether or not the additional fee for continuance is waived. Because are you asking if the applicant to pay for additional advertising if necessary?
If necessary. I'm not suggesting there's going to be a fee for a continuance.
Okay. I guess I would request, I don't know the answer to that. I really don't, Mark. At this point, I guess.
Well, Craig, so yes, the continuation fee is $200.
Okay. And so are we?
And I don't have the ability, nor does this board, to waive that fee.
Okay. So.
So that includes or presupposes that advertising is going to be necessary. So that would be included within the $200.
Unless we can find a date tonight, I would have to re-advertise this.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to commit to a date tonight, considering that we're at a bit of a moving target right now. So, you know, I'll say if I have to, I'll pay the $200 to get it done to make this work. So we'll commit to the continuance fee. You can bill my office directly if you need to. Talk to my client about that, but that's fine.
Okay.
All right. Do we need a motion or a vote of any sort?
Yeah, I would certainly, I think the board should entertain a motion whether to grant the applicant's requested continuance upon the conditions that have been discussed on the record with the applicant through council.
May I have,
and
may
the
I have-
board's counsel.
I'll make the motion to grant the continuance at this point.
may I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Novatnik,
Yes.
Mr. Shantz.
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Good luck, and we'll see you when you get back.
Thank you for your
See
time
you in a
tonight.
little while. Thank you.
Thanks.
Greg, do we have to do any sanitizing this table? We don't. Okay,
Not as of yet.
all right, good. The next hearing is out of 526 Sixth Avenue. Would the appellant please come to the table? Just initially, can you tell me when the property was posted?
That was August 13th. It was posted on August 13th.
Thank you very much. Mr. Piper, can you give us the facts of the case, please?
This property is located at 526 Sixth Avenue. This is the appeal of Frank and Jennifer Del Corso for a use variance to convert a single-family detached dwelling into a two-family detached dwelling, and subsequent dimensional variances for minimum tract size, 6,000 square feet required, 5,600 square feet existing, lot area per dwelling unit, 3,000 square feet permitted, 2,800 square feet proposed, and minimum lot width, 60 feet required, 40 feet existing, and variances to reduce the off-street parking requirement, 4 required, 3 proposed. And from the additional requirements for conversion, minimum 3,000 square foot of habitable floor area are required, approximately 1,875 square feet existing. This record lot is 40 feet by 140 feet and is located in the RT high-density residential zoning district.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to have swearing in of anyone testifying or wishing to ask questions during the proceeding. Would you please stand and raise your right hand? And that would be anyone who's with us virtually, if you will also raise your right hand and take the oath.
Thank you. I do.
I do.
I do.
Thank you. And are you Mr. Del Corso?
I am.
Would you proceed?
Sure. So I think hopefully this is an easy one. Craig laid it out pretty well. So I'm seeking some relief for a home that I wish to convert back to prior use. It was zoned as a two-family up until recently. A recent CO inspection made it convert back to a single family after it was discovered the kitchen that was on the second floor was removed. So I'm seeking relief for the off-street parking, which requires 4 spaces. I believe we have 3. Minimum tract size requirement is 6,000 square feet. This home has 5,600, so 400 square feet short, just under 7% short. And then the third variance sought is regarding the lot area per dwelling unit requirement. 3,000 square feet is required. Property has 2,800. So again, it's a small gap there, about 7% short. Fourth, lot width minimum requirement. It requires, my understanding, is 60 feet. The lot is 40 feet wide on one side, 41 on the other. Finally, the habitable floor space, which is required 3,000 square feet. I believe we have 2,057. That's what the listing had when I first bid on the property. I think the record tonight shows 1,875. So 2 units and just over 2,000 square feet is about 1,000 square feet per unit. There are homes in the area that have much less. For example, 633 Fifth Avenue, which is a 3-unit property, has only 1,800 square feet of habitable floor space. So about 600 square feet per unit. There's a couple others too, right in the same area that are also short on those requirements as well. I've invited Craig out to, and the building inspector out to the property and want to work with the town here. When I put the offer in on the home, my assumption was that it was a 2-unit and I purchased it as such. Then the CO inspection happened and it was converted back to a single family. I didn't buy it as a single to convert it to a double. I thought I was buying a double. So now I'm just seeking to have it zoned back to its prior use. And I don't want to change the character of the neighborhood at all. Really love the area. Just want to, I know some of the neighbors had sent in some concerns to address those. You know, understand growing up on a dead end street with tough parking. I know it's hard, especially when it snows. So I hear that. Also, I don't want them to believe that I'm a, you know, out of town landlord just looking to make a buck in Bethlehem. I do live in New Jersey, but I was married in Bethlehem. I belong to the church, St. Joseph's Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Bethlehem. My children were baptized here. We haven't missed a Celtic Fest in 20 years. We love it here. So, you know, the whole charm of the neighborhood, the charm of the town is what drew us here, and which is we're trying to build more roots here. We eventually would love to retire here. So thank you.
All right, Mr. Del Corso, one of the tough thresholds of any variance consideration is the proof of a hardship that you're needing to overcome. Can you address that issue?
Yeah, so the lot size is, you know, smaller than what needs to be, and that's something that predates me. I didn't establish that lot size. So I know it's short for what it needs to be now, but the home was built and the lot was out in 1910, I think. I had no control over that. Also, as I mentioned, I thought I was buying a 2-family, and now it was rezoned as a single family.
When you say you thought you were buying it, is that how it was advertised?
Correct.
It was. Mr. Piper, just to assist the board, can you advise us as the nature of the use variance?
Certainly. So, you know, the city will stipulate that the property was used as a 2-unit, actually for some considerable amount of time. Whenever real estate transacts in the city, it is required to go through an inspection process. At the time of the inspection, the inspector notified me that the interior of the dwellings had been modified and that there was no longer separation of 2 units. And in fact, one of the units had its kitchen removed. Upon finding out this, we contacted the applicant, and they did bring us out to the property. We did inspect the property. And unfortunately, they meet the classic example of deconversion where the intent was there and the overt acts were made to actually combine this back into a single. Therefore, you now have a conforming property, and it would be subject to the section on deconverting non-conforming properties and then reconverting them back.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mr. Del Corso, is there anything else you wish to offer in testimony?
No.
All right. Questions from members of the board? Ms. Stone.
Well, you're not going to live at this property now. You're converting it back. So there's a first floor and a second floor. How would the tenant get to the second floor?
So there's a side entrance with access to the second floor.
Okay. And then would there be any access to a fire escape in the second floor? Would that be necessary? Would that be part of the code or?
Not to my knowledge.
All right, that's all.
Okay. Mr. Schneck.
In the letter that you've attached,
right,
you're widening it to 30 feet. Is that basically how wide? That's as wide as you can make it. It kind of seems in your plan.
Yeah, as it stands now, there's some hedges on the left side that would need to come out. It's, I don't know how many feet, but to get to that 30-foot width, that would have to come out, and new macadam put down or gravel.
The in your letter you say that's enough for 4, but I agree that a standard size parking lot is 9 feet wide, so you probably get 3 with a little bit of room. Get 3, like you stated. Sorry. But you might end up being able to fit 4. The houses around you, are they very similar to what you're proposing?
So on the main street there, they're mostly twins, but if you walk onto West Broad There's a lot of duplexes on West Broad.
When you say west, how close in relation to that is to you?
I'm not really sure exactly, but there's probably from the house to the end of the street, 1, 2, maybe 3 homes, and then you're at West Broad.
Okay.
Right across, there's a duplex. I just did a quick walk today around, and if you take a left, there's one there, and then there's a few houses down. There's a row home there that are 2 units each.
Okay.
So just a quick look around today, I found quite a few.
All right, that's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Lee?
I have no questions at this time.
Mr. Novotny?
No questions.
Mr. Shantz?
No questions.
Actually, I have no questions either. I would like to, at this point, open the floor for questions only from members of the audience with us, unless Attorney Malcolmus, you have anything you need to add?
No, I don't.
Mr. Piper, nothing.
None, thank you.
Is there anyone in chambers who wishes to ask questions of the testimony just presented? Seeing no one, is there anyone with us virtually? Because I know we swore in at least one person. If so, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself and tell us your address.
Yes, good evening. My name is Jill Edwards Mancini, and I'm the owner of the house. I really don't need to say anything unless you have questions of me. I would just like to say that every house on this block is a duplex.
This is questions only of the testimony
Okay.
that we heard, please. So if
All
you
right.
have questions, we'd welcome them. I'll allow you to testify a little bit later.
I have no questions.
Is there anyone else with us virtually with questions? So Ms. Mancini, you're going to see how quickly I came back around to you for your testimony. I would now invite your statement.
I think that Mr. Corso has done a very good job explaining. What I would only add is that this does not change the character of the neighborhood. The hardship would be not to permit it to go back to its long-term use. Every house on the block is a duplex. They're side by sides. This is one on top of the other, but they are all 3 stories. They all have porches. So it is right in character with the neighborhood, and nothing will be changed to in the physical appearance of the house.
May I ask you a question? Were you the previous owner, did you say?
Yes,
You're the current owner?
I am.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay. Is there anyone else with us virtually who would like to offer comment or testimony? If so, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself.
Ask her one question.
Let me just finish. Seeing no one, Mr. Shantz, you had a question.
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to ask you, were you the one who removed the kitchen then on the 2nd floor?
Yes, I was. I made a mistake. I don't know if you saw my letter that I wrote. And if I did see that it is part of the record, perhaps we could mark it as an exhibit and have it entered into the record. And what happened was the house has been used as a 2-family unit for over 70 years. Again, this is anecdotal. This is what I was told by the individual I purchased the house from. But I moved in and I had 4 children, and I had 4 young children, and I was working, and I had no idea that I was changing the character, or I should have gotten it permitted. And I deeply apologize. That was a total mistake. I just needed another bedroom for my for my children, and that's why I did it. I always had the intention of returning it to a duplex because it's much better suited to be a duplex now with the addition that was done some 70 years ago. The piping is still there. It's just a matter of reconnecting things. The utilities are still separated. But that was my error, and I apologize.
Since you're the current owner, does each floor have a separate bath then?
Yes, each floor has a bathroom, the ability for a kitchen. One has a kitchen, 1 bedroom, a living room, and a dining room.
And so by your testimony, all that would have to be done, a stove installed, sink installed, the lines are still there, pot, cold water, sewage lines, to be able just to put the kitchen back in. So it's not like everything has to be reinstalled, just equipment has to be put back in, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. One last call from any members of the audience wishing to testify or introduce comment. Seeing no one virtually or in chambers. Sir, did you have any closing remarks that you would like to make for the board's consideration?
No, just appreciate you considering the variances. Thank you.
The board has received various documents that actually the last witness made reference to, and I believe they should be marked. You want me to go through them and mark them?
If you would, please.
Okay. There's a letter from Mr. Del Corso that's attached to the application. We'll mark that applicant's 1. There's a letter from Jill Edwards attached to the application. We'll mark that applicant's 2. There's some architecturals. Let me see, 4, 5, 6 pages. Mark those collectively A3. There's an agreement of sale. We'll mark that. And then the board has received letters from various neighbors expressing concerns or opposition. And has the board seen those? Does the board have copies of those?
I've seen those. Does anyone else? We normally we note that they're received, but since the folks are not with us in person and we're unable to question or cross-examine either with the applicant,
okay,
we simply give it the appropriate weight that we feel is necessary.
Just for the purposes of the record, I'm going to mark them A5, and whether or not the board considers them, certainly that's discretion of the board.
All right.
Yeah, actually, that's good point, Mr. Pfeiffer. We're going to mark those as O1.
Okay, sounds good.
They're not part of the applicant's presentation. And I do understand for purposes of the record that these letters were sent to the applicant by Mr. Pfeiffer.
Yes, I did receive.
Okay, Gene, we're going to go off the record. Why don't we go outside? Thank you. Every time I sit here, I end up.
You're
my feet tied together. Are you sure you're not doing that? So I've got a people like somebody else for that. Love shit. You're gonna sit, right?
Frank. Nice to meet you. We've talked a lot, we've emailed, now we finally meet.
Oh, yeah.
recognize the waistband.
Yeah.
Is it township? On the park, right?
Oh, nice.
Not this.
All right.
Oh, we had township.
I know that retail space. Not the last one. They're letting go dessert.
There's two issues, right, order here. Okay. So they could put it on.
I'm sure this is the way it happened in Pearl Harbor. One group put
That's
it
true.
together to get- Sorry, Gene, I'd like to go back on the record. I think we do need a clarification from the zoning officer.
And again, I would say the same thing. There were no decisions made, no votes taken in the back.
And that pertained to parking? Am I correct, Attorney Malcolm, Mr. yourself?
Yes, I believe that the board had a question regarding what the intention was of the applicant with respect to parking. And I think in the first instance, I think it's important that the zoning officer define what parking is there and the extent to which either relief is required and being requested or additional parking can be created.
Sure. So what I put up on the screen is a image of the rear of the property from Google Streets. And you can see that there is approximately 27 to 30 feet of paved area. Typical parking space 9x18, this would accommodate up to 3 off-street parking spaces. You also can see that there's a shed on the property. When I was out there, I can verify that that was there at the time. I don't know if it has been moved or not, but you can see it's on a concrete pad. If that shed were to be either removed or relocated somewhere else onto the property width is 40 feet. 40 feet would easily accommodate 4 9x18 spaces, being 36 feet. We do require a 2.5-foot setback from the side lot lines. So the applicant would subsequently need of 6 inches on either lot line. So it would basically be 2 feet of open space, 4 9x18 stalls, and 2 feet of open space between both lot lines.
So under any circumstance, the applicant's going to require some relief as it pertains to parking, either by variance with respect to the parking creation or as it pertains to the number of off-street spaces?
Correct.
All right.
Hearing that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to approve the request made tonight by the applicant.
And is that with 3 spaces or with an additional space being required?
I'll make the motion with the 3 spaces.
May I have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Novatnik,
Yes.
Mr. Shantz,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
No. Your appeal has been granted. I'd suggest you wait for the written appeal before you proceed, but I wish you good luck with the project.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Good luck, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. The fourth or the next and final hearing is that of 2040 Avenue C. The appeal of Susan Mauser on behalf of Lehigh Valley Academy Regional Charter School. And while the applicants are taking their seats, I did want to disclose that I am the executive director of the Arts Academy Charter Middle School. However, in that capacity, neither I nor my school have any direct business relationships with the applicant, and I therefore feel that I do not have a conflict of interest that would prohibit me from continuing on as chair of the hearing. And I've discussed this with Attorney Malcolmus.
Yes, and I would confirm that, and I told Mr. Fitzpatrick that I believe he, if he can decide the case impartially, and if he doesn't have any preconceived bias, either pro or con, he should participate in the case, but ultimately it's his decision whether he chooses to do so, but I'm not aware of any conflict. I think one of the other members, Mr. Schneck, I think you wanted to disclose something on the record as well.
I'd just like to disclose that I'm currently working on another project with the civil engineer, Mr. Massey, but I'm working with him in a professional capacity, and I'm impartial to.
Yes, and again, I've discussed that with you, and I also agree that that does not present a conflict. That's very typical with people that are involved in land use, that you know people, you have past dealings with them, you've worked with them. So it would sometimes be tough to get aboard if everybody had to recuse themselves because they knew the applicant or their witnesses, especially as it pertains to professionals.
So, and I thank you. So without objection, we would proceed with both Mr. Schneck and myself.
No objection here.
Anybody have any objection or concern?
All right. Attorney Preston, can you tell us when the property was posted?
A week ago.
All right. At this time, I'd like to swear in everyone who will be testifying or anyone who will be questioning or introducing testimony. Would you please stand and raise your right hand? Oh boy, you had a good turnout here, Attorney Preston. Thanks for helping out. Thank you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
All right. Mr. Piper, can you give us the facts of the case, please?
Parcel is located at 2040 Avenue C. This is the appeal of Susan Mauser on behalf of Lehigh Valley Academy Regional Charter Arts, the Lehigh Valley Academy Regional Charter School to convert the former office into a school, which requires a use variance to permit a school, public or private, primary or a secondary. This lot is irregular in shape and totals 15.014 acres and is located in the PI Planned Industrial Zoning District.
Okay. Attorney Preston, the floor is yours.
Yes, and I can see that the hour is growing late, and so can I poll the gallery? Can I determine if there are objectors here this evening? Is that?
Certainly.
Is anyone here in opposition to the application?
And may we ask the same question of anyone with us virtually? Is there anyone in opposition of the application? You could just identify that, in fact, that is your position. Seeing no one virtually.
And Mr. Chairman, thank you. And here's the reason I asked that question. I see the hours getting late, and obviously for the record, my name is Jim Preston, and I do represent the applicant. I have an outline here that I'd like to move through briskly if I can. And again, I'm very familiar with the board. Hopefully the board's familiar with me. There's no disrespect intended. I don't mean to be curt or short, but I'm going to move through this fairly quickly. And if the board has any questions, please feel free to interrupt. I think there's a lot of ground to cover, but I think we can do it in a timely fashion.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
So what's going to happen by way of outline, we're going to do this chronologically. We're going to talk about current conditions. My engineer here, Mr. Justin Massey, he's going to describe the property, where it's located and so forth. And then we're going to move over to Douglas Litzenberger. He's with FL Smith. He'll describe current conditions at the property. Then we're going to get into some real estate issues. We have two real estate professionals to talk about the marketing of the property. And then we're going to get into the proposed use. And we have the CEO of the Academy that will be here to discuss the proposed use with you. And then probably most importantly for the purposes of our legal burden, we're going to talk about the suitability of the proposed use and the unsuitability of the building for the permitted uses. And for that, we have an architect, Sylvia Hoffman. You probably want to pay particular attention to her testimony because I think as far as case law is concerned, it's going to be fairly important. And then we're going to close out with a little talk about traffic. And we have our traffic engineer, John Wichner, who's going to talk about that. So Justin, would you please identify yourself for the record, just briefly, a little bit
Yes.
about your training background? So
My name is Justin Massey. I'm a Pennsylvania licensed civil engineer. My license number is PE 059590.
Okay, I'm going to show you a picture. Do you recognize that?
Yes, that is an aerial image of the site, which is demarked in red.
Okay.
Is that something that the board has, so we
They
can?
do not.
I don't think it's in the packets.
Attorney Malcolm, I'm handing these up. I've marked them. I've taken the liberty of marking it as Exhibit
Beg your
A1.
pardon, it is in my packet.
Okay.
So yours, yeah. Yeah, it's toward the back of the packet.
Well, Tracy did send these down. I'm not sure how they got distributed, so.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
This one?
So you can-
It looks a little different.
This guy.
Oh, okay.
You can have mine if you want. We'll share.
Is that one there?
Yeah,
Are they all the same? Okay. Yeah, this is,
Oh, it's a
Yeah, it
different,
is- it is
I beg
different,
your pardon. Okay.
Jim, this is applicant's A1.
That's A1, yep.
Thank you.
these are copies for the board?
You should have plenty of copies. of
Okay.
that. I'm also going to take the liberty of marking A2. And I'm going to hand that up as well. Justin, I've marked this as A2. You familiar with that?
I am familiar with that.
In fact, that's your work product, is it not?
It is.
Okay. Yeah. So
Thank you.
I've marked this next one as A2. It's a little bit of a segment of the city zoning map. Now just take a minute for those to go around. I've marked the first one, which is the aerial photograph, as A1. The second one, which is the zoning map, I've marked as A2. And then Justin, let's get situated here. Where's the property located with reference to A1, please?
So the property is located at the northeast corner of the intersection of Avenue C and Shanersville Road in the city of Bethlehem in Lehigh County.
Okay. Now with reference to A2, which is a portion of the zoning map from the city of Bethlehem, is that correct?
It is, yes.
Okay. You have the cross-hatched area marked site. Is that the property that we're talking about now?
That is the site.
And that's the site of the FL Smith office building, is that correct?
Correct.
Now I see that it borders Hanover Township. Is that Lehigh County?
It borders Hanover Township, Lehigh County to the north, and then across from Shanersville Road, it borders Hanover Township, Northampton County,
Okay, and then the balance of it borders within
within the city of
within the
Bethlehem.
city of Bethlehem. A charter school use, I want to talk about that for a minute. It's not permitted on this site, is that correct?
That is correct. It is in the PI district, and that's not a permitted use.
Okay, so, but if I went into the Hanover Township Lehigh area,
So if you went
the
into,
adjoining property, would it be permitted there?
it would be allowed as a special exception.
Okay, on the,
That's in its PUD planned unit development.
so it would be allowed in the adjoining property. Now, the other Hanover Township, which is in Northampton County, which again abuts this property, is it permitted there?
It is permitted as a conditional use there in the PORR Planned Office Research and Residential District.
Okay, now swinging around to the city of Bethlehem, the first area I come to is the CS. I believe that's Shopping Center Zoning District. Do you see that?
That is correct, and that is immediately south on the opposite side of our site from Avenue C, and schools are a permitted use within that district.
Okay, so the only place on our perimeter where it wouldn't be permitted is the balance of the PI, is that right?
That is correct.
And it's permitted everywhere else around our borders.
That is correct.
Now, the zoning ordinance for the PI district has a very long list of permitted uses. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I reviewed that.
Okay, and I'd say there's probably 10, 20, 30. There's probably 30 or 40 different uses in there. I normally go through these and I say things like, is a plant nursery a reasonable use? Is a pet cemetery? We're going to skip that tonight. Having reviewed those, are there any of the permitted uses in the PI district, which is what our property is on, that would make sense for the use of this 200,000 square foot office building?
When I reviewed that, without respect to marketability, given the existing condition as a 3-story single use greater than 200 square foot building, the uses of office, trade school, university, data center, and research facility seem to be the only permitted uses that really could be used on this site.
And you made that determination as an engineer, is that correct?
That is correct.
That doesn't factor in any marketability or?
Does not.
I'm sorry, you said office, trade school, university, research facility, and what?
Data center.
Thank you.
Data center, and they seem to have sort of an educational bent to them, at least some of them.
So, 2 of them definitely did.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Questions from members of the board?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Mr. Schneck.
Right across the street, would it also be permitted? You did the,
Yes.
Yeah, where the Dickies is, the Dickies Barbecue, is that what you're talking about?
no, the Wawa and the bagel place.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
in the commercial.
No questions right now.
No questions.
Mr. Shantz.
No questions.
I have no questions either.
Okay. Are we done with him?
Yeah, let me just be certain. I think we polled the audience. I just want to make sure, is there anyone in chambers wishing to question the testimony just introduced? Either in chambers or with us virtually. If you're with us virtually and want to ask a question, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Seeing none in chambers or virtually, you can move to your next witness. If you want.
Okay, I'm going to call Doug Litzenberger, excuse me. Doug, how you doing?
I'm fine.
Okay, you've been sworn, right?
Yes.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Douglas Litzenberger. I'm the operations controller of FL Smith Inc., which was formerly known as Fuller Company.
That was going to be my first question. What's the connection between FL Smith and Fuller?
FL Smith took over the Fuller business in 1990. Former competitors, FL Smith and Fuller, they joined forces in 1990.
In what business?
Cement and mining equipment supply.
Okay. So now they're on the same team.
Yep.
And they were in what, Catasauqua?
Yes, formerly in Catasauqua.
And they moved down to this particular site into this building. This building was designed and used as a large single
Corporate
user
headquarters.
office. Is that right?
Corporate headquarters.
Okay. And for how long was it used in that manner?
Till it's current to today.
Okay. Can you give us a little bit an overview of the demographics, the change in the employment population?
Yeah, so in 1996, we actually added an annex to the building to accommodate additional related business and people that were moving in. And we reached our maximum capacity in the building in 2008 at approximately 900 people in that facility. And FL Smith actually employed about 1,200 people. We actually leased space in the adjoining office parks to accommodate an additional 300.
Okay. And where are we now? What's the current?
Approximately 250 people.
In the entire building?
In the entire building, correct.
And so the building's not fully occupied?
No.
What is FL Smith's, what are their plans? What are they?
We would like to relocate to an office that's appropriate for 250 people within Bethlehem.
Within the city?
Within the city.
Okay, and this would help you do that, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, you've been trying to market the building, is that correct?
True.
And you've employed real estate professionals in that pursuit?
Yes, we have.
How's that going?
It's been on the market for quite a while. Even leasing the space has been difficult because of the structure of the building.
Okay, it's really designed as a single user
It's designed to be a corporate headquarters for one big office.
building.
correct.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Members of the board, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Schneck? Ms. Lee?
No.
Mr. Novotny?
No question.
Mr. Shantz?
Just one. When you say the building was on the market for quite a while, are you talking pre-COVID?
Yes, it was listed pre-COVID.
Approximately when?
I think right before.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Shantz, we have the marketing history.
Okay.
That we're going to give to you here shortly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I have no questions, and I'm just going to ask for anyone wishing to ask questions either in chambers or with us virtually to quickly identify yourself. Seeing no one, Attorney Preston, we can move on to your next witness.
I'm going to call Matt Dorman. This is you, right?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Dorman, just, you know the drill. Go ahead and
Yes.
introduce yourself.
Good evening, Matthew Dorman, D-O-R-M-A-N, with Jones Lang LaSalle Real Estate. I was tasked, well, do you want to?
You go ahead.
Yeah,
just
I
keep
was
going.
tasked with doing the marketing of the building, and when you asked about a date, we actually, there's quite a history here, and in 2010.
Okay, hold on 1 second. I don't want to get ahead of the story. I'm going to mark this as A3. Would you take a look at A3? Tell me, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That is a outline of the marketing history of the building.
Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand that up.
Matt, you spell your last name Dorman?
Correct.
Just wait a minute for that to work its way down the line.
I'm sorry, what was the name of the real estate company?
JLL, it's Jones Lang LaSalle.
Thank you.
I believe you said you were vice president?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. Okay, I think we okay? Are they?
We're good. We're good, attorney.
Okay. Then Matt, why don't you use A3 and you heard Mr. Shantz's question. See if you can explain some of the marketing history.
Sure. And just real quick, 20 years of being in commercial real estate. This started back in September 2010 when FL Schmidt split their mineral technology and their cement business, therefore reducing the headcount in the building. And that's why we were brought in to lease the available space, the vacancy that was created in the building. So the building was leased, actually listed for lease in May of 2014. So throughout that process, and you guys have this in front of you, there's a history there showing, the lease transactions. We were successful in obtaining 2 tenants in the building, PPL Solutions, which actually occupied part of the annex. And the annex was really the only part that could be broken up because it was smaller floor plates than the main building. So we were able to lease the second floor of the annex building to PPL Solutions, and then subsequently they downsized and are no longer a tenant in the building. So they didn't need as much space. 2017, we did lease with Health Network Laboratory. Same discussions going on here. Do not need as much space as what they have here. History of the leases, RFPs that we received as far as other tenants that would be interested in the building. Again, it's hard to find large tenants to fill the floor plates. We had a concrete business looking for 30,000 square feet, just wouldn't fit within the building. Building provider, 15,000 square feet. Very difficult to demise the spaces. Smallest floor plate was 20,000 square feet, so we couldn't carve off 5,000 square feet since the design of the building. Sports technology company, again, 15,000 square feet, same situation. And an insurance agency looking for 25,000 square feet, and just the current layout and design just did not accommodate them. Moving on to the purchase offers. Again, you have this in front of you. We had a New Jersey developer look at the building to multi-tenant it. After a little due diligence and not a formal process, they realized the cost to multi-tenant the building, again, because of its existing layout, very cost prohibitive, and therefore withdrew their offer. We had another offer to turn it into industrial, which I believe is a permitted use. And then a verbal offer for another developer, since our industrial market is very hot in the Lehigh Valley. Then we come across Lehigh Valley Academy, which single tenant user. No. So that's the brief history of the marketing of the property since 2014 to today.
So in sum, there appears to be some difficulty in marketing the property.
Hate to admit it.
Sure. Well,
But yes.
Go ahead. That's what we're here for. Put it out there.
Yes.
So ultimately, what I think where we're driving is it really doesn't have much of a marketability given its configuration as a very large 3-story corporate headquarters, single user office type building. Is that right?
Correct.
So you've had some nibbles, 25, a couple feet here, a couple feet there, but
not anything substantial that would take a large portion of the vacancy.
Okay.
Correct.
I have nothing further for this witness.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Schmidt?
No.
No questions.
Mr. Schott?
No questions.
I have no questions either.
Okay. Good job.
I don't really have any.
Okay, I'm going to call, how we doing here? Oh, we're doing pretty good. I'm going to call Cindy Feinberg. What did I just do?
Good evening. My name is Cindy Feinberg. I'm the broker of record for Feinberg Real Estate Advisors. We're a boutique commercial real estate firm. I'm a CCIM, which is a certified investment commercial member. 10% of all commercial advisors have that designation, so it's just something that's has a different level of expertise. Formerly, I was the Director of Community and Economic Development for Lehigh County, so I worked extensively with a lot of the businesses that were in these type of businesses.
Okay. And what's your connection to this, what's going on here this evening?
I am working as the advisor and the broker for the academy.
You want to start here?
Sure.
I'm going to hand you something. Take a look at this. Tell me if you recognize it.
Yes. This is a summary of the marketing efforts that Matt just gave you some background on, what's happening in the Lehigh Valley, and some thoughts on how obsolete larger buildings are in the Lehigh Valley.
Okay, and while that's going down the line, we'll just touch on a couple of the highlights.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
So Matt did talk a little bit about the difficulty with the marketing that they ran into. A lot of that really does have to do with the very large single tenant building, and as it was designed as a corporate headquarters. Matt also discussed the opportunity for smaller spaces. When you look at the Lehigh Valley, when you look at large buildings, and we'll be sending some other information your way as well. Sure. One of the things we'll be providing to you is just a summary of some other office properties in the 100,000 square foot space.
Let me do this, Cindy, for the purpose of the record. You're talking about a document that you have in your hand. It's titled Office Properties, 100,000 plus square feet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're familiar with this document?
Yes.
Did you put this together?
I did, yes.
Okay, then just give me a second.
Okay.
I'm going to ask that be marked as A5.
And as you're passing along, that's the document that shows larger properties in the Lehigh Valley that are available. It will also show that these are large properties that have been vacant for a very long time. Some of them tried to repurpose, but are very difficult to do. One example of the property that's in there is PPL Plaza that remains vacant in the city of Allentown. Another interesting project in a similar manner was the former Guardian Center that was in the Northampton County area, where they tried to use their building in a similar fashion, redesign it, decided that it really was an obsolete and inappropriate building for them. They moved and developed a whole new corporate center for Guardian. That property was sold and was redeveloped for a flex industrial space. So there are some instances where these larger buildings are getting redeveloped in different areas, but in the case of this situation, it's not a good location for industrial. There's small industrial parks there, and if you're having extensive truck traffic, it could be difficult. Matt also had mentioned that one of the things they looked at was industrial redevelopment for this property. That would be a cause for environmental concern if you have to demolish a 200,000 square foot building and take care of all of the demolished product, which could cause some environmental concerns. We looked at comparable sales. So what other very large buildings in the Lehigh Valley were repurposed? The one that I can point to is 555 Union Boulevard, which is the former Western Electric property that you may know in front of the Iron Pig Stadium. That was repurposed for a charter school. Very large facility, Big Plates was a technology company previously. The other thing that you run into in these large buildings is are some incentives in the city of Allentown with the NIS and the city of Bethlehem with the CRIS That's an opportunity for developers to be able to have bond financing, and they recoup the debt service from that based on taxes. That's also something that is pulling some of the suburban properties to urban areas, which is a great thing for the urban development, but you still have a very large corporate environment that would stand vacant. I believe, based on what's happening in the market with the properties of over 100,000 square feet that I shared with you, and the size of this building, that although Matt and Phil are incredible marketeers, they would be trying to market that property for another 4 or 5 years before it could be sold to a single user, office type user. The other thing that's really interesting is the office market is very different now because of COVID. I was on a call earlier today. Castle Systems is the company that does all the access cards and card readers for buildings. They track what's going on in the industry and with the business. They have statistics right now that say only 31% of us are back in our offices. And that Lehigh Valley is very similar to that. So it's a concern with COVID, it's a concern with the changing marketplace, it's a concern with the availability of very large markets and buildings. One of the other pieces of data that I would like to share with you is CoStar is a technology company that tracks resources, data, statistics. We use it as a data analysis tool, we use it as a marketing tool. I'm sharing with you the office market report for the Lehigh Valley.
Let me get it into the record, please. I'm going to ask that it be marked as A6. It's a document, quite a few pages here. It's titled Office Market Report, Lehigh Valley, PA. And so you're familiar with this?
Very familiar.
You compiled
Yes,
this?
I did, yes.
And you're going to tell us how you did that?
Yes.
Let me get a few of those up to the board, please.
So as they are being passed along, again, it's through a tool that we use called CoStar. In the commercial world, it's the premier data tool that we use for analysis. When you look at that tool, if you open it to the first page, three things actually I'd like to note. The first paragraph on the left talks about the major factors reshaping the Lehigh Valley office market. And it talks about limited demand and the coronavirus likely modifying that demand. The other interesting thing to note is you see that it says 512K in red on the top of that report. That's a negative net absorption. That means that that's how much came on the market that has not been released. What's really interesting is I did it 3 weeks ago. It was 427,000 net absorption. This, when I ran it 2 days ago, 3 days, on the 19th, it was 512,000. The other thing that I wanted to just point to your attention is that coronavirus is expected to reduce office demand overall, and that will mostly likely impact the Lehigh Valley as well. Economically, it's difficult. The office footprint is changing, and large buildings such as this would be very difficult to repurpose without having something like the use we'll be discussing.
I have no further questions.
Questions of the board?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Schneck? No. Ms. Lee?
No.
Mr. Novotny?
No questions.
No questions.
And I have no questions either.
Okay, thank you.
Good to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Susan, come on down.
There you go.
This next witness is Susan Mauser. She's the CEO of the Lehigh Valley Academy Regional Charter School. And now that I've introduced you, why don't you introduce yourself a little further? Give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. My name, as Jim said, my name is Susan Mauser. I'm the CEO of the Lehigh Valley Academy. I'm also employee number 001. I've been with the school since we started in 2002. We're a K-12 charter school. As I mentioned, we started in 2002 with 170 students and 13 employees. Today, our enrollment is somewhere around 1,825 students. This time of year, it's always a little fluctuating. We're budgeted at 1,850. We anticipate that we're going to be there for the school year, K through 12.
Now, obviously you currently operate a charter school.
Correct.
And where physically is the charter school now? Where is it located?
We're located just off Valley Center Parkway, which is on the other side of Shanersville Road.
So you're less than a mile. Your current facility is less than a mile from this facility.
That is correct.
So you're essentially just, if the board were to permit this would be just sort of a local move.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your current operations? And let me rephrase that. How is it you intend to use this particular site? And again, I want to call your attention to things that the board might be interested in. Those would be things like traffic, queuing, hours of operation, those kind of things. You and I have discussed this a little bit in prep. Why don't you, for the interest of time, describe for the board how you expect this thing to operate?
So we are a K-12 school, and at this time, and we suspect that'll probably be the same in the new location. We operate with everybody on the same schedule. So in order to avoid the school districts having to transport multiple times, everybody arrives at the same time and everybody leaves at the same time, K through 12, and the students ride the bus together. So our arrival time is between about 7:45 and 8:15, and then our dismissal time is right around 3:30 in the afternoon.
And how is the traffic handled? I know sometimes when you have these, start and stop times, is it going to be backing up onto the streets? How's that handled?
We've had almost 20 years of experience of winding our traffic on our property through the parking lots and making sure that they stay off of that it stays off of the main road.
And how does the size of this property compare with the property that you're at now?
The current property we're on is about 10 acres, and I believe the property we're interested in, or the FL Schmidt building, is about 16 acres. So it should provide us with a little bit of additional space in order to have the traffic weave through the parking lots.
Okay, and again, how many years have you been doing this?
Almost 20.
20
It's our
years.
20th year of operation.
Okay. And I think you attempted at some point to try to construct a facility, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you engaged an architectural firm to look into that?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And what happened with that?
So we spent some time over the last few years determining exactly what it is that the school needed in terms of a size of a building. So we're currently located in about 150,000 square feet plus a 10,000 square feet modular. Our lease expires in 2023. When we sat down to really kind of start from scratch and say exactly, what do we need for our program, we determined that we needed about 200,000 square feet of space. And we actually designed a building that was a 3-story building, has some similarities to the FL Schmidt building. So some of the things that, were included in that were the docks, the stair towers, elevators, cafeteria, things like that are also already existing in the FL Schmidt building.
Okay, and our architect's going to get up here shortly and explain what some of those things are. I believe the ownership of the building was a consideration, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And do you anticipate any circumstances or conditions that would cause any issues for the surrounding properties or the neighbors, or any conflict with the neighborhood if you were allowed to move, 0.7 miles up the road?
So we have prided ourselves on being good neighbors for the last, we've been at this location. This is our 19th year at this location. We were previously off Bridle Path Road with the Sisters of St. Francis. So we've prided ourselves on being good neighbors and have made sure that, particularly in regards to traffic, that we keep the traffic in our parking lots, and have actually gotten praise from Hanover Township about our efforts with that. So in the summertime, when we're closed for 2 months and there's no traffic whatsoever, anybody who's employed in the corporate center during that time is rather surprised to see the yellow school buses come back in August. So
Okay, but the fact of the matter is you're currently located right off of Shanersville Road.
we are.
When you move, you're going to be located right off of Shanersville Road,
That is correct.
just a little further up.
Exactly.
Okay, no further questions.
Members of the board.
Just a quick question. What school year would this building be ready for use or attendance?
The 2023-24 school year.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schneck.
I'm good.
Lee.
I'm just curious, do you anticipate more students by
We are
2024 or less or?
we've grown over the years, but we're almost at our expected kind of capacity. So we would anticipate no more than 1,950 students in total. Based on our current growth, we suspect that in 2 years, by 2023, we're going to be somewhere between 1,850 and 1,875.
Okay.
So very close to where we are
And
today.
this building would have enough room?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, when we sat down and designed from scratch, and we determined that we needed 200,000 square feet of space, it was with the idea of 1,950 students.
Okay, thank you.
If the board were to grant your request, would you be planning to take the geese with you to the new location? Because my wife and I would love to come back and walk through the complex. No questions.
No serious questions. Yeah.
That was a good one.
Mr. Shantz, you concerned about the geese as well?
Only if they can be served for dinner. No, I'm just kidding. Come on, I had to get in a dinner joke. It wouldn't be a meeting if I didn't get in one dinner joke.
So sorry I invited that.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, actually, Ms. Heller, can you pull up the current Google Maps to see where the school is? I'd kind of like to just see if we could current comparison to what the school looks like now, where they're at versus what this looks like, because just to see how, just for my own feel.
I just need,
Oh, sorry.
could you just give me the address of your current facility, please?
Well, we technically have 4 addresses because we're located in technically 4 buildings. 2 of them operate as one. So the middle one is 1560 Valley Center Parkway.
Can you just kind of just walk me through how your campus is set up?
Sure. So the red dot, the building that has the red dot on it, that is our K3 building. So that houses about 600 students, kindergarten through 3rd grade. And then right behind that, or to the right of that, is our recess yard. And then on the other side of the recess yard is the 4 to 6 building. So that houses primarily our 4th through 6th graders, 450 of them. And in the back corner, right along the top of that, we do have some what we call central office space, some administrative offices. And then on the other side of the K3 building, the 2 upside down backward L-shaped buildings, we really operate as one. That's our junior, senior high school, grades 7 through 12.
And with the new building in mind, you'd be able to consolidate all to your in one building, one campus, one location.
Yes. Under one roof, yes.
One roof.
And we actually were, the program that we were looking to be able to operate under was a K-5 elementary school model, a 6-8 middle school model, and a 9-12 high school, kind of a more traditional model. And the new building would allow us to do that. Whereas these buildings, because of the size of each of the buildings, we actually, had to separate it the way that I shared with you.
I noticed the new building has an outline for gymnasium, for basketball courts, for outside amenities. Do your current facilities have those outside amenities?
We do. We have the recess yard between the K3 and the 4-6 building, and then at the bottom of the parking lot that is used for arrival and dismissal during the school day, we actually have a couple of basketball hoops installed there as well. Yes.
It looks like you have a ton of parking on both facilities. Do you actually fill up all your lots?
No. No, not in terms of parked vehicles. No, I mean, we have our employees. So that's about 280 employees. Our students, we have very few student drivers, less than 20. And then the rest is really traffic is open for us to like sneak the traffic through as parents are dropping off or picking up in the mornings and the afternoons.
Is there much redesign of the current of the proposed building to convert it to schools?
Interior, yes. Exterior, no.
So you're not going to have to change any outside walls, just interior, just to.
Not that I'm aware of. Okay. No.
And we do have an architect that could probably fill you in.
I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just one question, Ms. Mauser. You had indicated that the proposed site actually gives you more space.
Yes.
And I was impressed with the way you outlined the way traffic and safety have been handled. Does this, in the larger space, give you a greater level of safety or traffic management than the site in which you're currently located?
Yes, in terms of safety, both having everything in one area, definitely. And then the other thing is that having everybody in one building. We currently have students that have to go between buildings, staff that are walking between buildings through parking lots in order to do that. So having everybody under one roof and it enclosed with limited access to the building is definitely an additional, safety benefit.
Thank you. Again, I will offer the members with us in chambers or virtually, anyone wishing to ask questions, either go to the podium or unmute your microphone and identify yourself, please.
I'm Lisa Pector, P-E-K-T-O-R.
I'm sorry, ma'am, what's your first name?
Lisa.
Lisa, thank you.
Yes. I own the building across the street from this at 2041 Avenue C. I'm also Lehigh Valley Academy's current landlord. So I just had some quick questions as to the regards to the consolidation of students. If part of the reason the office market is a thing of the past, as Cindy was alluding to, why would that same concern not be for consolidating all the students into one facility? Where you currently have students separated in 4 different buildings, and now you want to bring them all into one facility. But part of the argument as to why office is a thing of the past is because people are reducing the amount of employees under one roof. So I just wanted to understand the logic as to why it was safe or an ideal situation for students to have consolidation.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but Cindy.
Yeah, do we need another witness to answer this?
I think
please.
so, yeah.
Go ahead, Attorney Preston.
Switch, a little switch.
Got it. Okay, great. It wasn't it was that particular type of building that was a single tenant building. Yes, in the Lehigh Valley, due to COVID, you know, Lisa, the market is changing, but this is specifically a 200,000+ square foot building that can't be redesigned into a multi-tenant building.
Okay. And then I had a question on, or a clarification question, I guess. When you were looking at purchasing the buildings, were you not looking at purchasing an additional building, which would give you additional square footage?
That is correct.
Okay. I'll reserve other comments for later. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions? Seeing no one, Attorney Preston, we can go to your next witness if you
Okay.
like.
Thank you. Sylvia Hoffman.
Ready to go.
Okay. So my next witness is Sylvia Hoffman. She is an architect, and beyond that, I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us about her credentials.
My name is Sylvia Hoffman. I'm president of MKSD Architects. I'm a registered architect and a member of the American Institute of Architects. My firm specializes in designing project types from hospitals to K through 12 buildings to colleges and universities, corporate and industrial type buildings, new construction as well as renovations to existing buildings.
Okay, and you're familiar with the current location where the charter school operates, is that correct?
Yes.
And you're familiar with, I'm assuming, the charter schools, at least their design requirements?
Yes.
And you're also familiar with the Smith site, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before I'm going to ask you whether or not the charter school is a good fit for the Smith building. But before we do that, and this is particularly important to the legal burden that we have, the Smith building has been described as a single user, sort of a corporate office type of a building. Do you agree with that characterization? Yes. Can you expound on what that might mean?
Sure. So the building that the charter school is looking to move into was built in 1975 by the Floor Company. It was designed as a corporate office building, and it was compliant with the code at that time, the International Building Code, for a single user corporate type office building.
Now, the question comes up, you know, why can't you, I don't want to say deconvert it, why can't you make it into a multi-tenant office building, which I think is probably a permitted use? You could have a large building with multiple tenants in it and come into compliance. Is there a problem doing that?
It's a huge economic burden to accomplish that. And the reason for that is you'd really have to look at all of the building systems, from the mechanical to the electrical to the plumbing, sprinkler systems, structural systems. I'll give you an example. In a single tenant type building, you may have air handling equipment that cools and heats the space and mixes all the air together in one building, in one space, because this was a very open office concept. But if you're going to break down that building now for individual users and individual tenants, you don't want the person next to you controlling your heating and cooling. So there's going to have to be new systems placed in those buildings that will allow each of the tenants to have their control over the electrical systems, separate metering for the electrical systems, which is part of the code now that wasn't in 1975. So there are a lot of things you have to review, as well as even circulation through the building. So stair towers and elevators. How would you get people through the building to circulate when there's multiple tenants versus when it's just one open office space for a corporate user?
And that corporate user or that charter school user would be then in control of the entire environment.
Yes.
Of that particular use, as opposed to sharing that among multiple tenants.
Right.
Correct. Okay. Now, is it your testimony then that to convert this into a multi-tenant type of facility would be, I don't want to put difficult, expensive? How would you?
Yeah, it would be a significant economic burden that I think would stop a developer from purchasing that and trying to convert it into smaller tenant spaces.
Okay, what can you tell us now about the fit for the charter school? So if it's not practical to deconvert this thing, or I don't say deconvert it, but
Yep.
convert it into multiple tenant occupancy, and you need to use it as a single tenant building. We've heard from the real estate professionals that a single tenant as an office user isn't happening and it's not likely to happen. What can you tell us about the fit of the charter school if they want to take it over as a single tenant? How would that function in there?
Sure. I see a lot of parallels between a single corporate user and the charter school. One specifically is it has that campus look to it, that building that even just iconically on the exterior looks like it should belong to one company or to even a school or a college. On the interior, for example, the cafeteria space could easily be repurposed. That space could be repurposed for the charter school. I'll give you another example. In a corporate building, oftentimes each tenant will have its own individual toilet rooms within their suite. But for the charter school, or even for a single corporate user, you would have gang toilets right off of the hallways. So there are a lot of things that are very much in line. Also, the footprint is very large, so it would lend itself to larger classroom spaces, laboratories, multi-purpose spaces that are used by K through 12 students in classrooms.
And what about an entryway, a single large entryway that you would typically
Yes.
see in a school? Is that something that would?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, with multi-tenant, they may ask for individual, or they may need individual entrances on the exterior of the building. This doesn't really lend itself to that, but the single main lobby at the front door of the building does lend itself to a school building.
That's where the principal used to stand with the ruler, I guess.
Right.
Back in the day. Okay. So it's your testimony, just to sum up, that the Smith building is not readily adaptable to multi-tenant office use. Is that correct?
Yes.
It is readily adaptable to the proposed charter school use.
Yes.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Questions from the board? Ms. Stone,
No, thank you.
Mr. Schneck,
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Lee,
No questions.
Mr. Novotny, any question about geese or any other flying?
No question.
No. Mr. Schatz,
I do apologize for my bad joke earlier on.
not accepted.
I'm a straight man.
Any questions?
No questions.
And I have no questions either.
Okay, then.
Thank you.
Let me just canvass the audience. Is there anyone either in chambers or with us virtually who would like to ask questions of this witness? If you're in chambers, please come to the microphone, identify yourself. If you're with us virtually, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Seeing no one, Attorney Preston, we can move on to your next witness.
This will be my final witness. This is Mr. John Wichner. Now, come on down, John. I have to admit, before coming here tonight, I didn't know what I was going to find in terms of opposition. So we may have over-prepared a little bit. I have a traffic expert here that's going to, this is going to be, I think, relatively simple at this point. John, why don't you just first of all identify yourself, please?
Yes, John Wichner, Wichner. I'm an associate with McMahon Associates in Allentown, Pennsylvania. My background is in transportation engineering with a Bachelor of Science from Penn State University, Masters of Science in transportation engineering from Villanova University.
Okay, and we're going to make this short and sweet. You did take a look at the traffic patterns that would be associated with the charter school moving on to the Smith site, is that correct?
Yes, we actually did a comparison between the previous use with the proposed use. And when I say comparison, meaning comparing from a traffic perspective, the number of trips or number of vehicles on a daily basis. The former use of the building with FL Smith in operation, and we heard earlier tonight with a maximum number of employees of approximately 900 at maximum capacity. The Institute of Transportation Engineers, or ITE, would suggest that that building on a daily basis would generate approximately 2,841 trips. Now, obviously, I could not count that site in full occupancy. I don't have that time machine, so I did have to use the national standards of the ITE trip generation. Then moving to the proposed use. We had conversations with the charter school. and looked at a number of different aspects of their operations. We looked at time of day of their operations, time of arrival, time of departure, number of students, and what we did was take a look at their maximum capacity, which was testified to earlier, kind of a highest number of approximately 1,950 students. We also took a look at the number of buses. We took a look at the number of employees and staff members. We were also able to obtain historical data at the existing school during the school year. Based upon all of that data, we were able to determine that the proposed use would generate approximately 1,668 trips per day. So really, as a comparison for the former use versus the proposed use, is approximately a reduction of approximately 1,200 trips per day. I will concede that, you know, for schools, a lot of times the peak hours, they're concentrated in the morning peak hour and the school dismissal peak hour. Whereas from an office building, you may have slightly less trips on that one highest hour, but you also have a significant number of trips an hour before, an hour later. Someone may come to work at 7 a.m. Someone may come to work at 8 a.m. Someone may come to work at 9 a.m. So you kind of have that really extended peak in the office use, whereas in the school use, it is concentrated at the facility.
You said 1,600, how much?
1,668 would
thank
be
you.
the proposed use.
So in sum, the charter school is going to generate fewer trips than what the Smith building would generate at that. How many, was it 900?
900 employees. Yes, that is correct on a daily basis.
Okay, and to be honest, the charter school is operating just down the street, isn't it?
Yes, I would kind of characterize it, and I think Mr. Pfeiffer had a map that showed both locations on the same map a couple minutes ago. It is, relatively speaking, merely a rerouting of traffic or a redistribution of traffic from 0.7 miles away to in the existing location to this site. So with the less daily trips for the proposed use and a rerouting of existing traffic that we're seeing in this general area, yeah, our opinion that is not going to cause undue congestion to the roadway as compared to the previous use.
No undue congestion or traffic hazards, I think are those magic words.
That is correct.
That's not going to happen.
That is correct.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Questions from the members of the board? Ms. Stone,
No, thank you. No questions.
Mr. Schneck,
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Lee,
No questions.
Mr. Novotny,
No questions.
Mr. Shant.
Just one, are you charged with or dutied with the way to create like a channel lane for buses to come in, traffic to come in, so it doesn't back up onto the street?
We were not charged during this stage of the process for that, for that operation. I think as we kind of, move in toward future design, we would take a look at on-site operations. And I think it was testified to before that there's about 20 years experience in terms of making sure that those queued vehicles stay on site to prevent them from backing out onto Avenue C.
Okay, well, thank you.
Just one quick question. Previous testimony was that with the larger proposed site, there would likely be a greater level of safety for students and traffic inside. Is that something that you analyzed?
From the aspect of keeping all students on one site and then also having a consolidated queuing area to be able to plan the entire site as a whole for the queuing for the pickup and drop off areas, yes, I would agree with that. It would be a safer situation than various lines in various properties.
Thank you. I have no other questions. At this point, I would open the floor for questions from anyone with us in chambers or with us virtually. Anyone in chambers, please move to the microphone and identify yourself. Or if you choose to ask a question virtually, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Seeing no one, Mr. Preston, you can go to your next witness.
I have no other witnesses.
All right. Then at this time, I would open the floor for comments or testimony from any members of the audience in chambers or with us virtually. Anyone in chambers, please come to the microphone and identify yourself. This is testimony at this point, or comment.
My name is Tom Shaughnessy. I'm a manager with J.G. Petrucci Company in Bethlehem, Hanover Township, and throughout New Jersey.
Tom, what's your last name?
Shaughnessy, Shaughnessy. J.G. Petrucci Company owns 17 industrial buildings in both Lehigh Valley Industrial Park 1 and Industrial Park 7 in the city of Bethlehem. 50 of those industrial buildings, 15 are industrial buildings, 2 are office buildings. We're essentially across the street from and down Avenue C, so we're in the immediate proximity to the proposed repurpose of the building. We are the company, we have looked at this building, meaning the F.L. Schmidt building, on several occasions. First, as a multi-tenant facility, as was testified, we looked at that. Turned out to be not only overly expensive, but not practical. We also looked at it as we did to essentially buy the site, clear it, and build an industrial buildings. We did that as over at Hanover Township, Northampton County, with the former Guardian Life facility. Again, it was not financially feasible, and the site wasn't large enough to accommodate the industrial buildings that would make it economically feasible and successful. Also should be noted that, and I think was referred to, that along Avenue C is another school, Centennial School, affiliated with Lehigh University. So that's in another zoning district, but it's right in the same development. I think you're fortunate, both the city and F.L. Schmidt, that the building can be repurposed for education, because essentially very few end uses could be accommodated in a single tenant corporate headquarters. So I urge your support and approval of the variance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to testify in chambers or virtually? Anyone with us virtually, if you wish to testify or offer comment, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. And if there's anyone in chambers, would you please come to the microphone? Seeing no one, Attorney Preston, do you have closing comments?
Well, I would move for the omission of our exhibits. And then briefly, I want to thank the board for their indulgence. Again, no disrespect intended. I know I went rather quickly through the witnesses, given the hour. I would point out that I do enjoy a certain advantage here in that I have a Commonwealth Court case, albeit it's an unreported case. It does cite to the case law in support of the proposition for a use variance for a building that, quote, the building which was purposely designed as a corporate headquarters for a single company would require extensive renovations and would be difficult to lease to a single user because of its layout as a corporate headquarters. I've handed this case up to your solicitor. He obviously hasn't had time to look at it, but it's pretty much on point. It pretty much follows the facts of this case. So I think that legally we're on solid ground. I know that equitably we are. And I think as Mr. Shaughnessy said, this makes sense. So I would just simply ask the board to look favorably and grant the variance. Thank you.
Mr. Preston, there were some exhibits that were attached to your appeal.
Yeah.
There was a site plan. Can we mark that as applicant 6?
You certainly can.
And some photographs.
Probably at A7. Let's do A6 was the office
Okay.
market.
Okay. And that's the interim school plan analysis that has a AS001 in the bottom right-hand corner. And then there were a couple other aerials, and I'm not sure what the difference is. Well, they look a little different. Why don't we mark the other aerials as A A8 and A9. A8 being,
I think that shows a
ASL02.
suggested use, yep.
and A9, it looks like A9 is just a reduction of,
Yeah,
A7.
one has road names on it, one doesn't, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then, A10 is just, it looks like an overhead of the entire property with the building and the parking.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Gene, we're going to go off the record and into executive session outside this.
Just me. Just me.
Steve, General Counsel for events.
Oh, how you doing?
Impressed with you guys. Good job. Thank you.
Good, you know what? I was talking to Craig. How are you?
You made it, brother.
It is. It's a good project.
I'm tired.
How about you?
What's that?
Yeah. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, he did. Did he? Okay. I can't see him.
Not bad, not bad, yeah. So,
You know what he used to do? He has to stop doing it.
I know. I went to the opening night. I had tickets for the Mary's. I bought them. You know, the numbers. Honestly, I felt a little uncomfortable. Yeah. And I don't think I'm overly cautious, but it just seemed.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine.
See, that's why you're real careful.
Yeah. Times after that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, really? Good. Good.
We can vote. But it's not gonna be.
Oh, did you like, oh, so you were there too? Did you like the concert? Yes. Yeah. And I'm not even that much. Yeah, Darius Rucker. He's so. Good to see you. Okay, so yeah, I was.
I could pass.
You know, how they. Yeah. But it comes out.
There's a lot of. When you have
Yeah.
Seal it up a little better than that.
Me too, me too.
This chair is killing.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank
you.
Oh, you can keep it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Attorney Preston,
I got
before we
enough
go
of it.
back on the record, I just wanted to be clear. We understood you did not want us to render a verdict until at least 10:30. Am I correct? Not even close. Sorry about that. Gene, we're back on the record. I'm not going to let him answer.
I still have a minute left.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to approve the application of approve the application as is.
I'll second.
Terry, was that you?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Novatnik,
Yes.
Mr. Shantz,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. Great presentation. Thank
Now
you for
you can get the
moving
mock
thing.
scoop.
Hey,
Leave it here.
We'll have to coordinate a little bit about that.